Happy Saturday morning, everybody, afternoon, evening, for some of you that might not be in our time zones. Welcome, welcome. My name is Andrea Reindl, and we are happy to have you here today at our event, Start Young, Go Far, where we're going to show you how to create some businesses with your kids. And we're really excited to have you here. So today we're going to talk about three things when it comes to creating businesses with your kids. Number one is, how do you create a mindset of an entrepreneur with them? And how do you help your children have that entrepreneurial mindset? So from a really early age, they're thinking about their own future, they're taking it into their own hands, and they're beginning to think about their life as adults instead of just as our kids. And number two, how do you paint a vision with your kids? How do you create a business with them? How do you help paint a vision with them, whether they're your kids or your grandkids? And then number three, how do you vet ideas? Like, where do you even come up with ideas for your kids and businesses and do that? So that's the three things we're going to talk about today. This is an event that you can interact with us. So feel free to ask questions in the chat, engage with us. We're actually here live. There's a whole bunch of people live on today. So welcome, and feel free to engage with us on a regular basis. As well, we'll drop the social links into the chat for you so that you can follow us after this on social as well. Next is, there will be replay videos after. So for those of you that are watching this replay, we're not live, you're just watching a replay. And we're happy to have you as part of our community as well. So you can take notes during the day, but also you will get the replays. So if you have any questions, you can use those, or you can ask them later. Next, this is Zoom. So we are, like I said, live. If you can turn your camera on, that'd be great. I saw some faces a second ago and then they went off my screen there. So some of you I know are on live. If you can turn your videos on, it helps us immensely. We've had a few like queries on both social media and in our email that people are having a hard time getting in. So I think what's going to happen is, as the morning goes on, there'll be some more people joining us. So we may ask you to turn your cameras on again later, just for the newbie people. Next, Zoom chat. I hope you all, I assume at this point, almost everybody knows what Zoom chat is and where to find it on your Zoom line, since Zoom seems to be the new form of communication. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask us in the Zoom chat, or comments. Like, as Rich is going through the content today, I think this is intended to be interactive. So if you have questions, comments, feel free to ask them in the Zoom chat. We've built in a couple of Q&A periods and blocks of time, so you can ask questions and Rich can answer you. So feel free to put that in the Zoom chat. And Zoom reactions. Oh, I did cover questions and answers. Zoom reactions, for fun, to keep everybody engaged and connected. If you feel like it, feel free to use those Zoom reaction things with like thumbs up, love this, hate this, crying, makes you angry, whatever. Emojis are such an awesome way to communicate. Finally, at the end of today, we've got some prizes to give out. So Legato, for those of you who aren't really familiar with us yet, is a brand that is here to help stabilize and bond families. And we have some really fun prizes that we'll be giving away at the end of the day that include some of our card decks with some 52 questions to engage with your kids, and then some of Rich's previously best-selling books, Bootstrap Business, Even If Your Toes Turn Purple, those kinds of things. So we've got some prizes at the end of the day that we'll be sharing with those of you that stick it out for the day. Next, super quick introductions. My name is Andrea Reindl. I'm your event host today. I've also been alongside Rich for the last period of time, helping him build the Legato brand. I'm extremely excited about this, as we are at the very early stages of something that I believe will make a huge difference in so many families. We also have Caitlin Steele on today, who is customer service support. She'll be answering any questions that anybody has about customer service, and she has a couple other people helping her as well if needed. And then Jesse has been taking care of all of making sure that the event will run smoothly today and that everybody has what they need. So thanks, team, for everything that you've done. With that said, I'd like to introduce Rich Christensen, who has been a mentor of mine for the last 10-ish years. And I know that many of us who call him our mentor are just absolutely in awe of how he's raised his family and his kids. And he's been a huge implementer, a huge influence, I should say, on my life for how I've raised my children. And it's part of how we've just stayed friends as long as we have and been a mentor. He is the founder of Legato. And Prior to this, though, he has started 52 businesses, right, Rich? Probably more than most people have ever started. Many of them have been wild successes. Many of them have been quick failures. And I think that's one of the things he has taught me is to fail efficiently. Like, okay, well, if this isn't going to work, quick, move on to something else. And he's one of the best business people I've ever met, as well as he is his wife's boyfriend. Fairly recently, him and his wife have decided they will just be dating each other and no longer, only being parents to so many kids and grandkids. And he is a absolute wonderful, chairman of the board for so many companies and has helped so many of us build businesses. With that said, Rich, I thought we could start this morning talking about a few of the businesses that you and your kids have built together, and primarily your kids. I would say maybe you've guided them and you've built these businesses with your kids have built these businesses, because that's our topic today. Okay, I get to brag a little on Rich that he doesn't get to do himself, including that Rich has 5 sons who are all at this point grown adults. They're all over the age of 18. They've all built multi-6-figure businesses or bigger businesses than that. And none of them live in his basement currently, which I think is the goal, right? As parents, I have teenagers right now. I'm like, okay, I just don't want them to live in my basement. We just got to get out that. Does anybody relate to that? I just want independent humans. So Rich has raised 5 really successful kids. And I think that that's a testament to how some of the mindset and the things that he's going to teach you today of how he did build businesses with his kids. So for that, Rich, we pulled a few of your favorites. The first one was Cherry Boys.
Andrea, before you jump into that, I do want to make sure and really point out that I know I kind of the front face of this, but the reality is my wife is equally, if not more, the catalyst for all of this. And just thank you so much for doing this. Of all the topics I cover, this is by far the most passionate and has been the most fun. The bunch of businesses you had mentioned, everyone says, what's your favorite ones? And inevitably, well, it's the ones I did with my son. So thank you so much for having me, Andrea. And did want to really attribute my amazing, incredible, now no longer, well, she's my wife, but my girlfriend now.
Yes, and I do know Gay very well, and she is very much it's been a co-effort between the two of you. So that's such a nice reminder as well. Okay, so the first business that we just want to briefly talk about, how do you start businesses with your kids? Tell us about Cherry Boys and Tim and Alex.
It's been, like I mentioned, it has been so much fun. And a lot of families at evening come home and talk about the sports scores or what's happened, in the opera or whatever you're talking about. And we're a bunch of nerds. I self-confessed at the time I was a little embarrassed about it. But at our family, we come home and talk about how do you dissect a market and how do you put together a pro forma model and what's the Porter model. And so my kids are always coming up with these fun ideas. I'm so glad that I took this picture. This was probably a monthly affair, but this one particularly, my wife enjoyed it so much that she snapped a picture. And this particular business was called the Cherry Boys. And you can see my son, this is my 2 youngest, Timothy Tyrus and Alexander Hans. And we have this beautiful, gorgeous cherry tree, and the cherries are truly delicious. And then one year we discovered there were worms in the cherries. And so as we were taking out the worms and giving it, or the cherries and giving it to the neighbors, we had a few, they were delicious, but did you know you have some worms in those cherries? And so not to be deterred, my 2 youngest took these delicious cherries, set up a stand with their friends down on the main street, and promptly began selling cherries. And they called themselves the Cherry Boys. They quite successfully sold all of them, paying their friends and such. And my favorite tagline, I don't know if you can see it there on the bottom, but it's just some dandy marketing. Look at that happy little cherry poking out of there, and the verbiage and how they were doing it and all the deals. But then at the bottom, they had the disclaimer that the cherries are 83% worm-free. I don't know about the 17%, but you had a 83% chance of getting a cherry without a worm in it. And I think it was probably 100% worms in it. But nonetheless, my son Timothy is a master marketer at the age of 8.
That's awesome. The next one that you guys did, and I remember you were running this one when we met, when you and I met,
Yeah.
you were talking about this quite a lot, is that you and some of the older boys uh, did a pizza coupon website. And can you tell us a little bit about that and how that was
Yeah,
one of your more
it was
successful
actually
ones?
really fun. It was ancillary. This one actually came about as part of and I'm not going to mention the names in case that someone draws it back. But the fun part is I went and hired my oldest son and his three closest friends as the technologist behind a major search engine optimization. It was actually the fourth largest SEO company in the world before SEO was a bad name, and they were coming up with the technology. So rather than experiment on everyone's websites, these four young men would take and build websites that they could test and try new strategies on. It turned out the strategies were wildly successful. They had the #1 ranking on Google for pizza coupons, Pizza Hut coupons, all the pizza coupons. They were #1 or 2 in everything, driving hundreds of thousands of page views. And basically, they were arbitraging all of these sites. So we would bring it in, hit the button, and then they would sell the lead to Living Social or Shop at Home or one of the other big networks for $5 per. So it basically just became this huge revenue engine external to the search engine optimization consulting company. They ended up, I think, with 120 websites. And this is one of the businesses that actually ended up being more, well, yeah, it became over $1 million a year revenue business being ran by teenagers.
And Rich, that for those of you who don't know that on the internet, like clicks or dollars, if you can get traffic to a website where people can see something and then they take action, there's just such a huge, it's like a game that all internet marketers play, right? It's sort of, it's like the video game of real life. Can we get people to the website? So these kids were literally coming up with, I like going, oh, I wonder if this would work, and then trying
Yeah.
it. And when it would work, then they were getting paid for it. And it's a really cool
Strategies.
business story.
The thing that was so mind blowing for me, and this was kind of my first venture in, and when I actually did this one, this was my oldest son's entity. Actually, this was his experiment. We talk about the rites of passage, and that's actually in the Legato family. Those of you don't know what I'm talking about, but when my kids turn 16, I won't pay for their college missions, but I set or their cars or anything that point going forward, but I do help them set up a business, and this was my son John's business. And the thing that blew my mind, it still does, Andrea, is how brilliant these amazing young individuals were, far smarter than even college graduates or myself. Some of the strategies that they ended up deploying of indirect, how you get links, which most of you are saying, what are you even talking about? But they came up with strategies that are still now utilized worldwide of indirect linking strategies that now are just staple. And it was came up by, as a matter of fact, it was so funny because as I was running this big agency, they would say, now tell us about your technology team, because this is brilliant. And I couldn't even say, well, it's a bunch of high school students. So I would indirectly go at it by saying, we're very near a very brilliant university, and there's a lot of really brilliant, super smart technologists in the area. Truth it was actually these four nerdy high school students that couldn't get their socks to match were defining the strategy for the whole company. And this pizza coupons and the 120 that flew out of it was actually led by my son John, his two best friends Scott and Wyatt, and an amazing young man named Jeff Lewis, who actually now is literally a rocket scientist.
Yeah, what a cool story. The next one, we had a big conversation about this. So one of the mindset things Rich talks a lot about is to fail efficiently. Like it's okay to try something and maybe not be great at it, but just to do so quickly. So this one wasn't necessarily as financially viable, Rich, but man, your kids learned a lot, and it's called Golden Plasma. And before we talk about it, I want to show you guys a video of Rich's two little kids. That was on this website. We just pulled just the video for you guys to see, so you could see how some of the skills the kids learned while they did this video, or while they did this business. Kelsey, can you play the video that's on the next slide?
My name's Tim.
And my name is Alex.
And we are happy to tell you about our business, Golden Plasma.
We started Golden Plasma as a little sewing store in our basement.
Once we got some neighborhood friends to help, then we decided to call it
Golden Plasma. We called it Golden Plasma because plasma is a type of energy and we need energy to build business. Plus it sounds cool.
For a while we were selling our handmade products, but then we came up with a great idea.
The great idea was sell African beads made by African women who lost their husbands in Africa.
The beads are made out of newspaper and paint.
We also made it to help us get enough money to pay for our college admission.
Please contact us at goldenplasma.com.
So, Rich, tell us about that business with the boys.
Well, I love that statement, helping Africa in Africa for Africans. And yeah, the interesting thing is so many of these, and I'm the ones that we just love now and laugh about were absolute failures. Did I know that business was going to fail? 100%. I 100% knew there wasn't a chance in heck. But as a parent, actually giving them the opportunity to grow and learn in a quarantined environment, this was just one of the many businesses they founded. Gosh, I mean, I've got 52. I bet Tim and Alex by the age of 18 had each had 20. And I knew that was going to fail, but look at the skills that were developed along the process and how fun that is. How fun is that? I've got that memory memorialized the rest of their life. They had a website to develop. They got to build a logo. They got to work with an engineering team to put it together. They were able to negotiate with Melissa, who had this company that was helping women in Africa. They became culturally sensitive and learned how to sell a product and develop it and set that whole structure up at a very, very young age. So arguably, just like, everyone mentions the 17 multi-million-dollar businesses, I'm more proud of the 18 or the 19 that failed, and equally for them. So giving our children an opportunity to have quarantined controlled failures, which we talk about, I think, a little bit later, but the concept of guardrailing and actually giving them a safe space to create and learn is actually arguably, I mean, everyone's like so cool about the pizza coupons ideas and $1 million. Like, wow, you know what? I actually value those framed failures. And we laugh more and have more joy at the lessons learned there than we did the successes. So that's just one of the examples of the failures my kids went through.
Rich, and Sherry put in the chat that she loves that your your kids are learning about public speaking, social justice, marketing, design, pricing, tech, all those things that's what it takes to start a business if you're an entrepreneur, right? And it's so much easier to learn it when you're younger.
I have to tell one, and I know, Andrea, we've got to hurry it along. You're going to have problems all day long micromanaging me. But it really hit me like a ton of bricks when one of the rites of passage that I have is when my sons turn 12. Again, this is in the Legato family, as you'll probably learn more later. But I take my sons to a third world country to learn non-entitlement. And we were coming back through Thailand to get ties for, I think, the next one. And my son, Nathan, I remember that, he did this negotiation with a street vendor that still I'm in awe of. And so if we let our kids loose and let them express and let them learn these skills early, they actually end up teaching us a thing or two. And I won't tell the story, but I really am dying to. So maybe.
Well, go ahead and tell the story. And this is the last business. After this, we're going to move right into like mindset stuff. But the other business that your kids started was to tie a tie. So you can.
Why don't you do that one? Why don't you show that one? Then I'll tell the story because it will fit better.
Sure. So this is the to tie a tie business that the boys started, and the older boys started it. But we pulled up a video of Timmy, who had to get in on the action as like one of your youngers at the time. And so Kelsey, do you want to play the slide or the video that's on the next one?
And let me set the context of it, Andrea. This business, what it was is we did some research, and the fourth most how-to typed in the world, the first three were sexual. We're not touching that. But the fourth how-to typed in the world is how to tie a tie. And the competition wasn't crazy on it. So my boys and I, we had a bunch of options. And my three oldest says, Dad, that would be a really fun one. Let's do that. So they ended up having to create the videos. Sorry for the quality of these, keeping in mind this was in like 2001. So this is when digital cameras had just come out, very old school. They got to work with a contracting team in New York City. The engineering was done out of Bangalore, India. And my sons had to learn all the tie knots and learn all this crazy, incredible skills. It turned out that this became the #2 search. I think they were getting like 40,000 views a day. 40,000 people a day were hitting this website. They ended up losing about $10,000 on this of their own money. By the way, look at the 14-year-olds. I had them pay for it. They were very frustrated because the problem was, when people are tying a tie, how do you monetize that? How do you make money out of it? Well, you can't sell them a tie, which was what their plans, because the tie is already in their hand and they're going to a wedding. So it ended up being a financial failure. But man, the lessons that my kids learned out of this still carries them. I mean, they're still utilizing the skills to this day of the lessons they learned out of it. So, and I think the video we're going to show is it turns out there's 24 knots. 24 ways to tie a necktie, and my son and their friends learned how to tie all of them. And they picked from oldest to youngest on which the most popular knots were. The half Windsor knot is the most popular. And my older sons were so ticked off at their younger brother, Timmy, because they wanted to include Timmy and Alex in this, but they were so frustrated that this video right here got double the page views of any of the other knots of the brother.
Hi, my name is Timothy, and I'll teach you how to tie the zippy tie. First, you put it on, and then you put the collar up, and then you put down, and then you zip it up. And that's how you tie a zippy tie.
All the work to tie the hard knots in the zippy tie. Zippy tie for the win, right?
Yeah. Financial failure, guys. $10,000 of my own kids' money. But you know what? It led to them creating $1 million businesses. And like you pointed out, man, my kids have been recording programming on camera since Alex, there was one called, he tied the clippy tie, where he got up and this is how you tie the clippy tie, clip, you know? And so I think that the lessons learned out of doing this are far more valuable than actually the money. But I'm here to tell you, every single one of you on here, I can't see you all, but you can actually have your kids buying your dinner. You can actually have your kids taking accountability at the age of 10 or 12 or 14 or 16 or 18. And that's what we're going for. It's the life lessons equal to the financial derivatives that come out of it.
Perfect. So let's jump into the content for the day, Rich, and start with mindset.
All right. I think just of all the things I do, this is the most important, the most rewarding. And I was very, very private around it. Even the fact that our family had done this has been pulled out of me kicking and screaming. But just very vulnerably and honestly today, I'm going to open up. This is the first time that we've actually ever taught a course or actually formally went with a course like this. So I'm just going to open all the way up the things that we did. And I just really want to clearly emphasize the things we have done as a family doesn't necessarily have to be the things that you've done. But I think that there are a couple of key things that we can shift to. The first is asking the question simply, how can I contribute? I think one of the first things I've taught each of my sons is if I'm pushing a broom, you push a broom too. If I'm digging a ditch, here, dig with me. I'll never forget my son Matthew. He's ended up being an amazing little entrepreneur, but he really took that to heart. At the age of 3 or 4 years old, my wife was always terrified because he'd see me out working on a back fence. He'd run out with his hammer and bang the plastic barefooted in the snow. He would run out and bang it. So I think teaching your children from a young age, or even at a teenage now, is just ask the simple question, how can I contribute? What can I do to contribute? And if any of us, even adults, are asking that question, we're indispensable, we're invaluable. So I think that that's the first part of mindset is looking for that. The second thing that I would say, Andrea, look for the problems. Most people moan and gripe and complain about the problems. I look, every problem I see, it's like, oh, there's a business. Oh, there's another business. And so getting in the pattern of when you come home and around the dinner table, or turn the TV off for 5 minutes and say, what problems did you encounter? And rather than gripe and moan about it, say, ooh, how could we fix that problem? And how could you charge for that? I love what I call the value equation, Andrea. And it's one of the key metaphors that about midway through raising my kids, I use this metaphor to actually articulate how you do a business. And this is actually how my son, Alexander, particularly came up with a bunch of his businesses. The concept is simply this: intellectual capital, or being smart at something, plus is service, or using service or helping. Relationship capital are the people you know. So you got intellectual capital, smarts, plus service. Relationship capital is the people you know. If you do that in the form of a business, which is equal sign, it always yields money. That sounds really simple, but it's actually never followed. Most people think, I'm going to get really smart, I'm going to get all this education, and I'll just be a bookworm and I'll keep it to myself. That's not going to make money. Sorry. Doesn't matter how smart you are. If you don't apply and serve people, you're not going to make money. Most people, or not most people, but a lot of people don't get the plus sign. They use the minus sign. I mean, how many people have you know, I'm going to get really smart and really intelligent at something, and I'm going to talk in technobabble and all of my terms and turds and confuse you and use the minus sign with my relationship and then extract money out of you in the form of taking advantage of you, and it's going to make money. It may in the short term, but it's not going to in the long term. So the formula again is get smart, serve the key people in your life, the givers in your life, do it in the form of a business, and you make a lot of money. The example I would love to give here, if I could, Andrea, am I okay to tell one more quick story? The example I love to use here is my youngest son, Alexander Hans. We've already established that our family's off the freaking rails with businesses, and I love it. So I came home one night, and over dinner, Alex declared to me, Dad, I started a business today. It wasn't terribly uncommon to hear that, but it's enough to perk my interest. Really, Alex, please tell me about that business. And he says, well, I've started a dog poop picking up business. I'm called the Pooper Scoopers. And my wife at that point, what? And he instantly says, Dad, don't worry. I use gloves, Mom. And he then told the story what had happened. The prior week, he was out just playing around, as my wife was talking, keeping in mind he's 6 years old, and playing around with his friends. And here's Jerry Hawks, one of our very eccentric, super cool, very fun, old, a little crotchety, but really a great guy neighbors, that's complaining about all the dog poop on all the lawns. He's walking his dog Barkley and complaining about, man, there's dog poop freaking everywhere. People need to be picking up their dog poop. And so my son Alexander hears that. And so he goes and creates a little paper similar to the cherry boars, and then photocopied it, and it basically says Alex's Pooper Scoopers. He got a bucket with some gloves. All you mothers, he did use gloves. He went around the neighborhood and picked up dog poop and put it into a bucket. Then he put this poster on everyone's door that says, Alex Pooper Scoopers, today bought to you for free. Every service weekly hereafter, $5. It was a little more crude than that. It was like $5 every week after. I wish I'd saved a copy of that one. Well, he put it all over the neighborhood. By the end of the day, he had 20 clients. By the end of the week, or by the end of the month, he had 100 clients. Do the math. $5 a week times 20, he's earning $100 a week. Times that by 4, that's $400 a month as a 6-year-old. Then he had 1,000, so now you got to times it by 5. So my 6-year-old had built a $2,000 business picking up dog poop with that formula. Intellectual capital, I know how to use gloves and pick up dog poop and put it in a bucket. Plus, I'm going to serve the most influential people that I know in my life in a very cute little thing, which is the neighbors, all the neighbors who didn't like the dog poop. He did an equal sign, which was business, and a 6-year-old ended up with a $2,000 a month business picking up dog poop. All right? So you say, oh, wow, great idea. Well, actually not. So when asked what happened, well, he ended up deploying from his friends. We had a little bit of an incident with gloves not being used, and my wife cut the head off the business. There was a neighborhood scandal a little bit on it. But I think it does prove the point really, really well, and I love to tell that story specifically because it's just so darn evident. Intellectual capital plus relationship capital always equals financial capital. It's actually how I got my start, the best mentor I had in my life. And Andrea, I don't know if we got time for that story. I'll let you lead. Do you want me to tell that story?
Oh, please. Yeah, you've got lots of time.
Okay. And this is actually not the prosperity equation. That's a different one. This is the value equation. But throw that screen up again, and maybe I'll tell the story in my life. I was, when my wife and I got married, we had $500. $500 and a Dodge Colt that had been totaled 3 times. Our weekly food budget was $14 a week, and I got a job at this company called Netline. And I was a peon. I was absolutely a nobody peon. And but I knew how to work hard. I was from a rural community, and so I was typically the last one leaving. I was in the customer service department. And I heard buzzing around the office that this really important guy was going to be coming, potentially investing $2 million in the company. And so as I got done with my work today, I was walking out and I noticed that the setup where they were going to do the demo, the screens were all dirty, the cables were hanging out, and the floor was just a hot mess. It just looked like a pig pen. And so I had intellectual capital. I knew how to push a broom and clean monitors, and everyone had left. So my wife had come to pick me up, and I says, here, just help me. So we spent 20 minutes. We mopped the floor and cleaned it. We put the cables organized. We cleaned the screens. Didn't say a word. Left the next day. They had the demo. Nobody even knew that I had done that. But this amazing individual who I just looked at him and I so respected him. He articulated himself well. He said the funniest things. I actually was kind of modeling after him. He dressed really fun, and he ended up figuring out. I still don't know how he figured it out, but he ended up finding out or figured that I was the one that did it and assigned me to be the guy that followed him around the country setting up his technology. And then he discovered it. Rich could say a few funny things once in a while and articulate himself when people understand it. So he let me start presenting a little bit. The company ended up going bankrupt, but Alan Hall became my first mentor. He kept talking about this company he was going to create called TempReps once the business went down. And so he went and created TempReps, which turned into MarketStar, which became a $1 billion company. And guess who my mentor still is? The one mentor that I started with is still the mentor in my life, one of the finest men that I've ever met, Alan Hall. I got my first big break in life. Oh, that's awesome to get that picture up of Alan. I love you, Alan Hall. Thank you for believing in me. But my start in life began with the first big break I got in my life happened because intellectual capital, I knew how to push a broom and clean a monitor. Plus, I served without expectation the key relationship capital, namely Alan Hall and the rest of the team. And we were in a business, and it's ended up it's worked out okay for me. So parents, if there's any one thing you take out of this, it's teach your kids how to serve, ask the question how I can contribute, and apply the value equation and put them in the mindset of serving. Andrea, I know this is taking longer than we thought, but I do have 2 other key things I'd like to mention.
Oh yeah, keep going. No, you're good on time.
No, you were going to interrupt me.
Oh, I was going to just ask about intellectual capital. I know that like what are the things that you help with your kids to show them where they have intellectual capital? Like everything from if they're super into Pokemon, or if
Yeah.
they're, which I know dates some of us a little bit because that's not the thing right now, but you know, like regardless of what they're into, how do you get really interested in showing your kids where they already have intellectual capital?
Well, you know, I think it's multiple aspects, Andrea, and thanks for poking that. I think this may bleed a little bit into the next topic of a conversation, which I think is great. But I think that, and this, again, this is in Legato family content. I go deeply, deeply in how to do this, but part of bonding with your kids and getting really deep relationships is don't force them into your paradigm. Whatever they're doing and taking interest, if it's not harmful, take an interest in it. I'm a level 38 Pokemon trainer. I'm proud of it. I listen to AGR with my son. This studio was created with my youngest son. My daughter-in-laws, I injured my back quite badly this year, and my daughter-in-laws came and says, "Oh, Dad, here we want to do something." So I'm now playing Minecraft with my daughter-in-laws. My sensei brought me in. So go to what they're interested in. But I think that doesn't always lead to business. I think it goes to really open communication. But if you're asking where are the problems with them, then it does expose what a business opportunity could look like. I think that the key opportunity for me, and I'm not going to call it cheating, but I'm going to call it cheat codes, which is okay to use, is there's opportunities all around us with what we already do. I happen to be just a brain damaged entrepreneur creating businesses like most people meet on popcorn. So of course that's what I'm going to do. If you're a dentist, somebody's cleaning your office, for crying out loud. What opportunity is open there? I mean, there's all sorts of skills in any profession that you can learn that can be ancillary and let your kids follow. I love that model. And it wasn't me that originally said it, but I picked it up. When I'm digging, you dig. When I'm swinging, you swing. And so, particularly when your kids are wrong, just have them come with you. I've been so impressed watching my wife, how well she does this. And I know I'm bleeding into some of your future content, Andrea, but I love how my wife, she loves real estate. Most men's wives buy shoes. My wife buys properties. And she loves her properties almost, well, second only to her children. And so when she's going out to clean it up, the kids are there cleaning up and they get a little compensation and go for lunch. When she's going to the bank, she shows them how to deposit, pops it in. So actively involved in the things they're doing. This is a lost art. And again, on the Legato content of how to unify and build and stabilize family, it's really important. Days of old, they did that so brilliantly. But now as we've kind of synthesized into more fractured economy, we don't do that as much. We don't have these like built-in internships. I'd invite you to do it. Whatever you're doing, bring your kids into it and let them get the perspective and experience, and then give them an experience on a lower level. Give them an opportunity to then experiment and follow their path. Cherry Boys is a great example of it. That golden plasma, there's no way in the world that's going to work. But what harm did it do? It cost them a couple of $100. They got to deploy it. They got on video and they got to learn great experiences. How did they do that? Did they just come out of the blue of doing that? No, they saw Dad doing it. They saw the modeling of what I was doing and they wanted their own expression, and we opened that door. So I think it's a combination of letting them see what you're doing, but not forcing them down that path. We're going to have this amazing opportunity here in a bit to listen. We're going to have some special guests that aren't me. It's River and Taryn Greenfield. I spent a couple of days at my cabin with them and their amazing parents, Ben and Jessa, a couple of weeks ago. And we're going to have a couple of 12-year-olds come on and teach us and how they're doing it. So I think, Andrea, I think I've killed this one with a sledgehammer. But listen to your kids, look for opportunities, and give them controlled environments to self-express.
Yes, that's so good. Rich, can you talk a little bit about where they can self-express and how you help them like start vetting ideas and thinking about like ways that they could get involved in businesses? So I know the one thing that's going on in my house right now is, does anybody here know what Jordans are? They're these ridiculously expensive shoes made by Nike that frankly, I think are just a whole lot of money for a pair of shoes for kids. Anyway, my son decided that he was going to start a business selling Jordans. And it turns out that if you can get them full price from like Nike, is really, really hard to get them. But if you just pay Nike's price for them, there's about 100% markup on them right away that you can resell them on Craigslist or Kijiji or eBay or Facebook Marketplace or whatever. So my kids have been running this business for a while and actually doing really well, making like double their money on their shoes. And then they're reselling used shoes also, which is, as you can tell, I'm super excited about that. Everyone wants to wear a pair of teenage boys' used shoes, right? But they even are selling above the retail price for them. So Rich, I know it was something that I kind of gave a little bit of resistance to at the beginning when Julian started talking about like, hey mom, I want to start reselling these shoes. And he thought it was a great idea. So I did a little research thinking, this is a bad idea, but it turns out he's made a bunch of money on it. So how do you get people, like, how do you get into your kids' world and help them know where to start?
Well, I think, Andrew, you are the perfect example of doing that. You actually listened and saw and asked the question. It's like, you're not running around with fancy pants sneakers, but you allowed them to express, gave them the space and the control variables to do it. I think there's two levels to this, is giving safe space, but then also having structures and barriers so they don't run off the rails. It would be really a bad idea to, here, let me spot you $10,000, go buy some tennis shoes. Bad idea. Good idea. Wow, that sounds like an interesting idea. And Andrew, I think we're going to run through the models that I use of how to vet good ideas and bad ideas. This is the zigzag content that we use, just how to determine. Ideas are easy. The question is it a good idea or a stupid idea? So we do that. So I would, at that point, start asking questions and then say, would you like to walk through and model that with me and see if that's something you'd like to do? And then we would walk through and then we'd set the guardrails. But I think you provide safe ground and allowed him to come up with the first money to do it and then use the profits and set this safe structure. So I think you're the perfect example. That example you just put is exactly how you do it. You didn't give a blank check. You didn't give safe space that he can go get eaten by monsters and predators. You put a controlled environment of how to do it.
So talk to us a little bit about painting the vision with your kids and how you move into not just the vision for like what the business is that they're going to start, but what the impact that business can have is going to be, and how they can like take something that interests them and then build something bigger than themselves.
So, Andrea, you saw that happen earlier with Tim and Alex. They knew right out of the gate that, hey, we've got to pay for our own college and our own mission, so we need to be about our business. So it is really a great opportunity to start young. And if you haven't started young, you can reframe and set your family values again to the family legato content that we keep referring to. But setting what is possible. One of the greatest ways to do that is not to use the whip, but to use a carrot. Hey, what family vacation would you like to go on? Let's brainstorm. Okay, now how are we going to resource that? Oh, well, I can probably put this or help here. Now, what are you able to contribute? I mean, just even with young kids, putting a family vacation jar out and saying, hey, we all need to contribute so we can go to Disneyland or go to the ocean and dig sand dollars. Whatever, is really motivating your kids. You can put out motivations and use carrots rather than whips to do that. And then instantly they're motivated to do it. And then the question of, hey, what are you thinking? Then they start coming with ideas and you can help them bed in and get to some small contribution. I mean, at age 3 or 4 or 5, kids don't distinguish between, a quarter and $250, but feeling like they're contributing and bringing in is a great way to start. I have to tell you that getting the successes with your kids, actually, it's a lot easier than you may think it is. And getting a little extra funds flowing so they're learning the lessons a little easier. I've found that the biggest challenge is actually when it gets going too well. I mean, everyone loves that story of my 16-year-old and my 15-year-old, having $1 million business. But at what point your teenager's making more money than the superintendent of the school district and all the principals in the district almost combined, you've got a new hot mess and problem. So you have to get really clear on what the values are up front. But then another great learning opportunity of setting up a board and formally teaching your kids the protocol of a simple little board meeting. Every vacation we would go on, Andrea, we'd end up having a board meeting in which not only wrote the trip off so we didn't have to pay for it, but it also set the context of, we put the 3 or 4, my wife and I, this is the structure of what it can, and then let them vote on what the money can and will be used for, including the charities that they ended up allocating and funding a lot of resources. Most typically that went to their 12-year-old non-entitlement trip they went on, but allowed them to actually use the resources and teach the principle of private victories, not public victories. So I think getting the context of what's possible, of, ooh, I can pay, oh, I can control this, allocating my money, the division of money, and teaching that at 10, 12, 14, rather than many 24, 35, 47, 57 don't learn that lesson. So getting that learned and controlled, and letting them make a few little mistakes along the way, again, controlled in a safe container, letting them lose some money, and then also letting them, invest and do it wise, and manage some of their employees, learn that skill early on is really powerful and really helpful.
So Rich, when someone's just like sitting with their kids thinking about doing like vetting an idea, what are some of the ways that you guys started coming up with ideas and then deciding which ones to walk through and like which ones to go forward with? Can you share us, like, go into some how-to with helping kids vet ideas?
I'll say, so you want to go, Andrea, would you like to go through the vetting of the ideas now, or the generating of the ideas?
Let's start with generating ideas and then vetting.
Okay, so I think that I'd mentioned several of them. For the record, I typically, in my model, in the zigzag principle is the model I use, we typically will come up with at least 50 ideas. We'll come up with 50 ideas before we actually settle on the idea. And so the first step is to brainstorm, and it's really important that you don't blend the brainstorming and coming up with ideas with vetting them out and determining which ones. Otherwise, you end up shutting down. So in the first phase, it's just all up. It can even be stupid ideas. I mean, one of my sons at one point says, let's build a tram to the top of Everest. It would have been very easy to say, that's the stupidest idea. Do you know how many billions of dollars? And it's not even possible. But don't do that. Okay, great. Let's put that on the list because it will be vetted later. So I think that there's multiple ways to do it. The first is this, what problems are there? What problems are out there? And just start listing the problems and potential solutions to it. The second is what are the areas of contribution? One of my favorite is to highlight the needs in my life of things I already have running. I'd mentioned a dentist, but if you're a chiropractor, a doctor, or even a tradesman, executive, there's all sorts of little ancillary opportunities that you're already filling. So start listing those and throwing them out. And it's really important to let your kid have a lot of say on what you end up doing when you vet it down and walk them through. Another thing I love to do is I would frequently take my kids on business meetings or trips. I would, particularly when they're 12 or 14, I just have them come and hang out and listen in and make sure we had some really good food and got to go to the walk a trade show. It's amazing what the kids come up with if they'll just go walk the trade show with you. And how fun is it actually to have your kid? I don't know how many of you are traveling, but if you're at home, there's also issues. There's chores at home that need to be done. There's lawn mowing. There's neighbor lawn mowing. You look at the crises. You look at the COVID, and you say, "What's a big problem?" I mean, COVID is just like, blue. There's a million ideas just off of the COVID needs. What about the elderly people that are stranded at home? Well, would they benefit from a food service or a loneliness? How about people with elderly people that their parents stranded? Could you go to the door and talk to them? There's a business for you that's paid for by the children. Delivery. I mean, there's so many businesses that could flow out of big problems, and just start looking at the problems and poking at little solutions. So first thing you do is come up with this big, long list of potential businesses and brainstorm into it. Andrea, that's the first step.
And one of the fun ways to do that is to actually just write them all on sticky notes and stick them on on the wall, right? Like, so you can see them all, just write them all on sticky notes, stick them on the wall. Or if you happen to have a whiteboard, you could do it on a whiteboard and stick them on a whiteboard, or, you know, put them in a jar, like ways to just kind of help there be a real open space of, hey, let's just generate some ideas. What are some good ideas that we could have as a family? And if you're like a high quick start, high idea type family, then maybe this comes really easily to you. But if you're a little bit more of a not that type of family, then maybe you have to work a little harder. And so, like, one of the things you can do is just even ask your kids while you're driving the car, like, what do you think that business is? And what do you think they do over there? And what do you think that is going on in that building? And start pointing out to your kids where there's businesses all over the place and how they add value to to the world, really.
And not to jump back to the mindset thing, but it really is a mindset shift, and it makes things so much more pleasant. It hit me really strong as we're driving through a drive-through to pick up some fast food. Yeah, eating fast food, not great, but we were doing it. And my son it's like, this line's so freaking long. It's like, and I'm not going to tell you which fast food restaurant, but you could guess it. What the heck? What they doing? And at first he turns agitated because we were late to Nathan's soccer game. And then it shifts to, wait, what are they doing? Oh, look at this. If they did this, if they put this, if they start solving the problem and looking at how to improve the efficiency. And then the game became, every single time we go through a fast food restaurant, is to identify the key bottlenecks. We call it Hermie in our family, the goal, a famous operational book. But where's Hermie? Where's Hermie at? Where's the bottleneck taking place, and how would you eliminate it? And a big problem and frustration turned into this awesome game of looking at how problems could be solved. So McDonald's is by far the most efficient, time-wise and throughput. And so my kids are doing the calculation in their heads. You know, every minute you're sitting there in that fast food restaurant that Sean named, they're losing profit. They're losing cycles. They're losing their resources by not doing it. And if they did this, and so I got like 8, 10, 12, 14-year-olds looking at ways to actually improve efficiency. And so it's not only idea generator, but it just shifts out of the negative, scarce, poor as me, victim, oh, darn it, everybody hates me, nobody likes me, I guess I'll go eat worms mindset, you know? And out of that scarcity hurt mindset into, ooh, I can produce, I contribute, so that when they get older, I mean, my kids now are far better entrepreneurs than I am, 1,000 times better entrepreneurs. And they're so far ahead of where I'm at, I can't even count it now. They're continually educating me on how to approach problems now. So it just, I know we keep talking about that mindset, but I think it's fun to point out there's a lot of ways to just shift it, and then the opportunities become really visible. If you get in the right mindset, and you know what, there's no rush on this. It's like going on a vacation. I'm not much of a Disneyland guy, but my experience has been the thinking about Disneyland and thinking about the roller coasters and thinking about the delicious cotton candy and the swimming pool in the ocean. It's actually more enjoyable and more rewarding than actually going and doing it. So you don't need to speed up and zip through like and it's particularly as alpha or you competitive styles. You join, let's get my 12-year-old in 1 week, Please don't do that. Slow it down. And 9/10 of this is the learning as much as the business. So teaching them, modeling how to do it and if you're not in the mindset of looking at problems and saying, how can I contribute? Maybe it's a great learning experience for you too. And all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing $100 bills popping out of the sidewalks. Everywhere you go, it's like, the big challenge that I think that I face is there's too many opportunities. I just, please stop. I can't see you anymore because you're stressing me out because I can't do you all. And that's what happens when you start looking at these first two models. So get it. I loved your idea, Andrea, of a whiteboard. That's what we've used, but I like even better the stick-it notes. Get a wall and dedicate it to every time you see business. Drop it on the on a wall and make it visible. I don't think a jar is a great idea because it's hidden and non-exposed. But come up with a bunch of business ideas and give yourself a quarantine time. I don't think it should be a year, but if you give yourself a month to brainstorm ideas and places that you can contribute, all of them, that's a great place to start.
Yeah, that's a great thing. So then once you have all the ideas, you've got them all on a whiteboard or sticky notes or wherever you're looking at them, what are some of the models that you use to vet those ideas?
All right. Andrea, before we jump into that, is it okay if we just take a
Yeah.
short little break? Would that be all right?
Oh, for sure. Yep.
Maybe we take a 5 or 10 minute bio break for ourselves
Yep.
and
Let's take a
everybody, and
10
then
minute break. We'll stick a timer up right now. Let's take a quick 10-minute break and then we'll come back. Welcome back from the break, everybody. I hope you had a quick break and took some time off. Welcome back. Before we get started in talking about how to vet ideas, now that you know like how to generate them with your kids and all of that, we're going to do a few Q&A. Rich, I have a few questions for you that people have asked, and I'm going to go ahead and ask them if that's okay, and we can answer those, and then we'll talk about vetting ideas. Does that work for you? All right, so here's the first one. What's the right time to teach your kids business? Like, when is the best time to teach them and get started? When's too early, when's too young, when's too late? What does that look like?
I think you can't start out PhD when they're 5 or 6, but I think you can teach a lot of the principles fundamentally when they're 5 or 6, as we did Alex. But it needs to just be basic block and tackling. But my belief is by the age of 12, 14, 16, they're pretty clued up and loaded up to actually go open a bank account, to start doing the savings process, to start seeing and having real life metaphors. One of the really fun businesses that we did early on was this simple. It was just gumball machines or candy machines. That can be done at 6, 8, and that teaches the lessons. I remember Nathan one time was eating out of the candy, and his younger brother, Tim, that you've seen a bunch of, screamed at him. I mean, here's this little kid, quit eating the profits, Nathan. So letting them go to Costco, buy the gumballs, pay for the machine and put it up. So that's really simple business that can be done at 6, 8. You shouldn't be having them do something advanced like websites at 6 or 8. You know, that I think can wait a little later, but certainly contributing, that can happen at 3, 4, 5. I personally believe by the age of 16, full scale by the age of 16, you can have a kid running a business and understand all the concepts. So I don't think it's an on or off. I think it's a gradual increase in knowledge, Andrea.
And how do you initiate conversations with your kids when they don't really seem interested? Like, if it's something that's not really the way that they're super excited about, or they're not ready to go, how do you initiate those conversations and then get them interested and make it a priority in your schedule?
I'm really a big believer that we go to where our kids are and let them self-manifest and not force them into it. Several of my children are far more entrepreneurial than others, and that's okay. It's okay to meet them where they're at. So I don't think forcing, but how I would initiate the conversation is, oh, mom and dad, I'd really like that new video game, or I'd like a new a dress or some dancing shoes or whatever it is. And rather than go buy it, say, oh, how are we going to get that? How are we going to afford that? How are you going to do that? Put it back to them. So what's your plan? Great. What's your plan to get those shoes? And then, so rather than you solve it for them, let them take it. A great motivator is I've mentioned it, but it kind of became crazy, but it's family vacations. If you have a talk and let them vote, here's the 3 ideas that mom and I were thinking about. Which are we going to do? Are we going to go swim with the sharks off of Island Catalina? Ooh, okay. Hopefully, I mean, you can do that with what they don't want to do. We're going to go to Disneyland, or let's go and I don't know what we're going to do, but give them 3 options and talk, and then give them voice. And then when they decide, then make a big deal, put a poster up of where you're going, put a jar right underneath it, and then say, how are we going to do it? How are we going to afford this? How are we going to do it? What's your contribution? There's mine. And then make a plan. That gets their motivation and unifies them. But I would never force. I would never in a million years force a child into something. It doesn't matter what that is. That's just a bad idea.
You know, one of the crazy things I hear a lot of parents talk about is like, oh, my kids are playing a lot of video games, or I'm spending a lot of time, you know, like they're spending a lot of time on some version of a screen, whether it's like this kind or that kind or whatever.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is there's some really great businesses within video games that kids can play. You know, like they learn a lot of skills from video games that can later be used in life. And so I think regardless of what they're doing, there's a way to see that and turn it into an opportunity and have them learn ways that they can contribute through whatever it is that they're doing.
I'm a big fan. I'm very down on, kids all screen time. I really am. But I mean, if you jump in, I just already mentioned that several of my most bonding moments now have occurred while playing Pokemon Go. Sheesh. I had no interest in Pokemon Go, but if my kid's banging on my door, Dad, help me, I need help. What is it, son? Oh, I think there's a problem. Oh, there's a Charizard over on the gym. Can you come help me get it? I mean, what dialogue does that open up? So I think going to where our kids' interests are, even if it's video games, and just making sure it's controlled and modulated. But that will open discussions and metaphors of, hey, just like we do that, you want to go get a real Charizard. Are you interested in doing a real are you interested in really getting some gold, not just on the computer? Because with real gold, you get to you can buy that new pair of shoes that you're talking about. Do you want to play a real game of optimization? So you can open doors even with technology. But I'm also a big, I know a lot of individuals have had real problems with technology, but it just, the way we set the structure up, Andrea, it's never become a real problem or issue. And I think that actually by getting the structure right, you can avoid a lot of the big social problems.
Yeah, one of the other questions we had asked is how many hours a week does it seem, or a month, would it seem reasonable to spend building, like doing this with your kids? What's the time investment for us as parents?
That's deeper in the content and program that I think that will come, and that's a lot of zigzag philosophy. But just to hit that question very directly, I'm a huge believer in guardrailing everything you do. And with your teenager, if they're dropping out of the high school band or the cheer club to run a business, that's stupid. Don't do that. So you've got to actually put a guardrail up front. How much money are you putting in? How much time, duration, how long are you willing to go towards this? Because when my kids turn 18, every one of these businesses, it was killed. And then all the profit donated back to charity. And so putting a duration of time, a quantity of time realistically, I think per week, you really shouldn't plan on having them spend more than 5 or 6 hours in a business that's even running. I think anything beyond that gets fairly problematic, particularly when they're 12, 14, 16, amazing, beautiful little 12-year-old in the neighborhood, and she comes around. I'm her number one customer that sells bread and cinnamon rolls, and she way overcharges for them, but they're that good. And it's 6 to 8 hours a week that she spends baking and then selling and delivering, but she's doing pretty darn well. She's a very wealthy little 12-year-old.
That's so awesome. What about helping your kids financially start a business? What's your philosophy on helping them get started maybe the first time, or where they get their first seed capital from?
I would do that in the form of chores. Don't just hand them $100 and say, good luck with that, sweetheart. Or if it is, then say, here's the deal. If I give you the $100 to start this little lawn mowing business, then you got to give me $2 of every lawn to repay that investment. So I'd be careful. And I have to admit, in all transparency, there have been times I helped a little bit in the early stages, but as I got more mature and realized, I would put a frame that they always had access to capital and making resources. And that's the mindset you're shifting in. There's always a way to get money if you're in the positive production mindset. It's just the question, are you willing to pick up the dog poop to get it? And if your child isn't at the point yet where they'll go bake brownies and take them down and sell them in front of the grocery store, if they're not in that mindset quite yet, then have them do a good chore. And even if you overpay for it, have them weed the garden, or mop the floor downstairs that's never been mopped, or clean the toilets, or something to feel like how do I contribute? And this is a very passionate point for my wife and I, because the last thing we wanted to do in the world was raise entitled kids. You'd mentioned we don't want our children living in our basement becoming serial killers. That's our worst nightmare, and why we put a lot of these models in place. So I would be very careful, Andrea, about just handing them money. That's the total wrong message we're sending for. I think the concept of whether or not it's entrepreneurship or not, having your kids involved in the family economy. The family economy is such a powerful concept that they need to contribute. They see money going in. They understand that maybe mom and dad is carrying more weight than they are, but they understand their place and role in the family economy.
Good, good. The next question we have is, if my child's business idea doesn't seem really feasible, how do you handle that in terms of, do I let them figure it out, tell them it's not a good idea? How do you, you actually mentioned this at the beginning, that some of those ideas you knew weren't the world's best ideas, but how did you handle and navigate that?
Well, I think that the first business is pretty important to get a little quick success. So the first one, you kind of jimmy rig. I call it using cheat codes. But I think the first one, you want to have a little bit of success and take them down the path gently. But as they get a little more mature in them, giving them a little latitude and a little rope to do it without doing an interrupt. And Andrea, I think this next section is going to help that a bunch. I'll share with you, I have any business I create, and again, I've founded now 52. Yeah, that much brain damage. I've founded or co-founded 52 businesses. And so through that course, particularly in Lean Startup, I've come up with about 3 or 4 models that I vigilantly use. And I won't create a business now if I haven't ran it through all 4 or 5 of these models. And so determining stupid idea or bad idea. This next section, don't do this. Do it with your kid. Walk through these little models with your kid and teach them, and then evaluate. So now you got your 50 businesses. I don't know if we're ready to jump to this, Andrea, maybe more questions, but I think that question will be best answered when we go through. I think we're going to go through 2 of the models that I use. Every day I use these 2 models. They're quick, down, simple little models, but that will help you guide your child through so that they say, that's a stupid idea. You don't want to be the one saying that. You want your kid to be the one that comes to that conclusion, or you walking through with the logic and letting them learn maybe. And then if still they want to do it, guardrail it. Give them a quick little, 2-week, okay, why don't you try that? Why don't you do that? Here, earn $50. And if they're earning $50 of their own money to do it, or even $10 of their own money from weeding the garden to try it, and after 2 weeks they have a bloodied nose, it's like, great life lesson learned. Better to learn that at 12 than 22 and rack their credit cards up and go in debt for a stupid idea that kills them. So I think that learning these lessons young and early in a guardrailed situation is really helpful. But Andrea, I do think that using these powerful tools that I developed and that I utilize will help determine between the stupid ideas and the good ideas.
Sure. So let's talk about that now. Let's jump into the vetting ideas and how you go about vetting ideas. I know you have a couple of favorite models that you use for vetting ideas, but after you've generated all of them, how do you vet them? Why don't we talk about that for a little bit, and then we'll... Okay.
Thank you. And I have 3 or 4. I have 3 that I just love. The third one's a little more complicated, and I'm not going to cover it on here. So I'm going to today provide 2 really simple little ones that you can walk your kids through that are metaphors that are actually kind of really fun. The first is really engaging. The second, just a little bit more laborious, but I still think it holds a lot of water. So I'm going to cover 2 today. So now you've got your 20, 30, 50, hopefully you got 30, 40, 50 ideas. When I did it with Alex, we had over 100 ideas. When he was doing his 16-year-old decision of what he does, resulted in this studio, actually. That's what he settled on. But he had over 100. So the first step is simply this. Just go through, read them, and strike any of the ones that that's kind of, I don't know what I was thinking there. So you shift out of the modality of brainstorm, anything goes, to them and you, and be soft with it. Don't power over them. But at this phase, we've got to, this is just too much. Of 25, if you have 50, at least 25 of them, or maybe 30, which just ones don't make sense, you really don't want to do, that you can just dismiss out of hand. And they'll go through quickly and they'll pull off. And if you got your stick-it notes, then have one side with a line that says in, the other one that's out, and you can just move it from in to out, and then you can start sorting the ideas. So the first step is just simply eliminate 20 or 30 of the ideas that you really don't want to do. Building an escalator to the top of Everest or a Skytram, not a great idea. So let's just remove that one. So that's first step. The second step is a model that a dear friend, to attribute the individual. This came out of the godfather of publishing, Ray Bard. He used it for books, and I've adapted this to actually be for entrepreneurship. So if we could shift now to my iPad, I'll just draw this out. All right, so it's just the simple little box diagram. The bottom axis here is his felt need, and the top is his size of market. That's 1, that's 10. Felt need 1, felt need 10. So this model again is called, let's see, I lost my model, the top. Well, it's called Where Should I Fish? Where should I fish? So size of market, if you live in a small town, that's really small, 1. The whole world, size 10, okay? Small to big. Felt need. Really don't care, really doesn't matter, no strong felt need at all, 1. Super strong, crazy, solving world hunger or solving cancer, that's a 10. Sometimes people trick up on this felt need concept. Andrea, do you want to take a whack and just give a second voice to the concept of felt need for me?
Yeah, so felt need is something that really, when you're looking at it, it's like, how important is this decision to somebody's life? Like, how deep is their need? Because, for example, if you're really, really hungry and you need, you haven't had food all day, then a burger is a lot more of a felt need than if you're just coming off of a meal and you're not really all that hungry and you therefore don't have a very deep need to eat again. The felt need is something that you really want to keep in mind. How deep is the need for somebody to want to buy your program or a product? And when we were working years ago, when I worked almost exclusively with books, there were books like How to Win Friends and Influence People is such a great book because it's got a deep felt need, right? People who really want to learn how to build relationships are rather motivated to figure out how to make that work, versus a book on, I remember I used to work with an author and he had this book about how you should test your saliva in your mouth and possibly find out other health conditions you might have. While it's a great idea, it's not something that most of us are going to rearrange our life for, to quickly go have our saliva tested and find out, if we have the possibility of getting diabetes in 10 years, just because it wasn't an immediate enough need. So you want to think about, when you're talking about the where do you fish model, the more the felt need for your target market, the easier it is to sell them what it is that you're selling.
Thank you, Andrea, for that little help and clarity. Okay, so now we're going to go fishing, and I'm going to use kid business ideas that I typically see in this. So the first one is going to be, we're going to create a lemonade stand. We're going to put a lemonade stand right out there on the corner of the intersection. And we're going to sell it like crazy. We're even going to come up with a really good poster. How strong is the felt need? Cup of lemonade as you're driving down the road, wait to alert, not very strong. Size of the market, how big is that? Well, it depends on where you're at a little bit. But the reality is it's really a small market. So I call that fishing in a mud puddle. Don't go fishing in a mud puddle. You'll never catch fish in a mud puddle. There's no fish. And that's why every lemonade stand in the history of the world, unless you got a really little cute girl on Charlie Brown, never makes any money. The kids always drink all the lemonade and they have a great little learning experience. And I'm not saying don't stop your kids from doing it. The reality is that Golden Zephyr video you saw, that was actually not a mud puddle. That was a swamp. You can catch fish in the swamp, but they're carp and catfish. And the margins are really, really low. So the felt need on that is low, but it's a big market. So let's say that we're now going to take and we're going to sell bear beads, jewelry made out of paper that are brightly colored, and we're going to sell that all over the world on a website. First of all, if we are profitable on it, then the margin's going to be really, really low. But second of all, the felt need just isn't strong enough. It's not like we're selling an engagement diamond ring. We're selling bear beads. And although the story's really cute and pretty, it's just not a strong felt need. So those businesses, if you choose to do one of those, the margins will always be really, really low. And my friends and I call that you have to pay attention to what's called transactional costs. In other words, the exchange and what you're buying, you have to be really, really tight and squeeze it to get profitability. This is the stuff that the dollar stores are stuffed with. Go into a dollar store and look around, and everything in the dollar store is this swamp kind of stuff. It's not strong felt need. And most of the dollar stores go and buy all the excess inventory of people who, and that's what the kids ended up doing, buy a whole bunch of bear beads to sell online, and then nobody buys it, so give it to all your family, friends, and relatives, and then go dump it in a dollar store. So don't fish in a swamp unless you really like to eat carp and catfish. So where does everybody go? They go to the ocean. Fishing in the ocean. Oh, delicious salmon and big tuna and all sorts of just amazing big fish to catch there. Really strong felt need, really, really big market. Let's give an example of that, maybe what teenagers would be. We're going to develop a new video game that is better than Minecraft and new bolt-on add-ons that give more colors and perspectives to a video game. Oh, the kids will get so excited about that because that's, although not, well, it's not swamp for them. It's a little stronger. Let's even take it stronger. Is delicious food for teenagers, packaging and delicious foods that a 16-year-old can eat that they'll love every single time. That'll be an ocean kind of idea for them. The difficulty is this. Anytime you're fishing in the ocean, it's mostly water. And in order to actually catch the big fish, you actually have to have a boat, and it costs tons of money. And so anytime you come up with an idea, oh, we're going to build an app, Dad, I would never do that because it takes so much money and the marketing is so expensive. You have to just spend so much money to ocean fish. I always push out of the ocean. And most big successful companies, including Amazon, by the way, didn't start in the ocean. Even now they control the ocean. Where I like to fish is the fish hatchery. I like to fish in tightly constrained little markets that tight little markets with really, really strong felt need. Let's come up with an example that the kids could do. I mentioned one earlier that I think is a really good one. COVID. Oh, already really, really hard. Kids having their mother, who is elderly now, stranded in COVID and not able to get her food or shopping, her not comfortable going out, and no social interaction. What is the felt need for a child with an aging parent to have social interaction and to make sure that she's cared for and checked on every day? Well, that's a pretty strong felt need for most kids, particularly a lot of guilt and a lot of anxiety. I wonder if mom's okay. I wonder if mom's okay. I can call every so often. Oh, she's out of potatoes and carrots and bread. How's she going to get it without getting COVID going to this? That's a pretty strong felt need. How big is that market if you do that in your local little town or community? It's pretty small. Now, I'm not saying to go do this business. I just came up with that idea because I mentioned it earlier. But you can see that that's a fish hatchery. Strong felt need, really small, tight, constrained little market. That's a fish hatchery. That's an area you can be highly, highly profitable. Boy, I could come up with a bunch of other examples.
Rich,
I'm gonna put one other up here.
Rich, someone asked, and I think this is such a good example. So think about Alex's Pooper Scooper business and just go through where would that fall and explain why it falls into there.
Okay, well, first of all, it's a very cute little 6-year-old that had incredible marketing. Okay, so let's analyze the Pooper Scooper. How strong is the felt need for people to have the dog poop off their lawn? I don't know. Depends on who you are, but it's definitely not a mud puddle. Let's do size first of all. How big is the market? Well, it's the neighborhood, so it's like right there, right? So we're just going to diagram. I'm going to put that in green. The size of the market's actually like right there. It's really low. How strong is the felt need? Well, depending on I suspect most people don't want dog poop that they're stepping in on their lawn. So it's probably right there. But at what point Jerry Hawks is running around the neighborhood making this storm and giving you nasty scowls whenever there's a dog poop on your lawn, it moves it to right there. When you add a 6-year-old with a really fun little piece of marketing that just solves the problem for $5 a week, then I think it even pushes it to right there. So it's certainly not here. If he had been able to come up with a cure for to alleviate pain for children with cancer, it's right over here. I think Alex was paying right in there. I think it was just a small annoyance that's easy to take care of with some really good marketing. Most businesses that I see, it's definitely not to the far extreme, but it's also not mud puddle. What color of pen I'm using to draw with. That's clearly over here, right? That's clearly mud puddle junk. So it was in fish hatchery, but not super strong. And that's why he was making $2,000 a month and not $20,000 or $40,000 or $200,000. How much would you pay if you had a child with cancer? How much would you pay for a ventilator if you were in COVID and your lungs were failing? Whew. Well, that's actually up in here. That's actually kind of ocean fishing right now. But you can really easily place the quadrants. Most people, all Main Street USA is built right here in the middle on the lake. It kind of makes money. It's kind of mud puddle. It's kind of everything. And so what we have to do, and this wasn't the content, but I'm going to just say this quickly because it's such a cool concept, is you should always try pushing down into the farthest quadrant you can. And that's where marketing comes into play. And Andrea, that's what you do better than anyone I've ever seen, is you increase the felt need and tighten the market. Most people think you should increase the size of the market. That's exactly wrong. You should determine who you're eliminating and push down here into this quadrant as aggressively as you can. This is the sweet spot. You can get to them. You can talk to them. So, okay, now pulling it back to the ideas. Take each of the ideas and just simply say, does that business idea, is it swamp, mud, puddle, ocean, or fish hatchery? And just draw on a big poster board or a whiteboard and put all the business ideas and block them there. And start, let's say I'm going to try coming up with more colors here. Let's see, what color am I going to use? I'm going to use a nice bright orange. There we go. Okay, now I got to close that somehow. I don't know how to close it. There we go. Okay, so now what you do is you just start identifying all over and putting your businesses. This one of our businesses ideas was candles. Another one was the elderly over here. And you just start with the kids walking through and placing them. And with the 20 ideas, you can do that in an hour or two. So now you got a map, and it's really simple. If you have 20 business ideas, I guarantee you that 10 of them will fall into this category. And just eliminate swamp and mud puddle. Don't do that. Don't do that. This one right here, if it's ocean, don't throw it away yet, okay? Don't throw those away. So now you've taken your 50, you eliminated 25 or 30 just because you didn't want to do it and was stupid. Now you've taken to 20, you'll instantly eliminate 10 of them. Keep the ocean, keep the fish hatcheries, and move to the next model, okay? So now you're from 50 down to 10.
Rich, somebody asked, when guiding, is it better to start your child off with something that's like a product or a service?
Oh, that's a good question. You have to intuitively know services are always the quickest to easy to unwind. Products are always a lot more difficult, particularly if you're ordering a bunch of inventory. My rule is sell it, then buy it. Sell it and then buy it. That's the best way to go if it's a product. Or actually a service also. Both have their downsides and upsides. Services means that you're trading time for dollars. And a lot of my businesses, in all integrity, that's how they start. But I sure try getting out of there as quickly as I can because you can't scale them. So actually both are appropriate. And I think I have to respond to that question by it depends on your situation. If you've already got a big child, let's say that you're a dentist. I don't know why I'm coming back to dentist, but I am. So let's say that you're a dentist. And at your front checkout desk, you have a bunch of flow. You have the channel already controlled. How easy would it be for your kid to buy 20 tubes of the very best extra dental fluoride infused toothpaste and set a little business that they would check out and put the little story with a little, I mean, see how easy it is to come up with this stuff? Oh my heavens. It's so easy once you start thinking in it. And put that toothpaste up there, have your kid buy 20 tubes of it and sell it for a nice profit and tell their story of what they're trying to do. And I'm trying to save so I can go to summer camp. And my name's Abby, and this is the best fluoride toothpaste that there is in the world that will help it save your teeth and not cavities. And see what I'm doing? I'm pushing it down there. And you won't have to see my dad as often. Sorry, I'm still in from your business, Dad. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? So that would make a product because it made sense and it's easy. But on the other hand, if you can't do that, then you can certainly come clean the office. That's a service. So it's 50-50 for me. You just have to look at how the time constraints already sit.
Rich, Sherry brought up that she with her daughter has done travel guides, and that they did a travel guide on Japan. Sorry, I don't know why all of a sudden I can't read. And then that her daughter's involved in like the video creation and help create the travel guide. And what a great way to teach your kid both to be excited about travel and go and learn about a different country and
That's
create
right.
something that they can sell to other kids. And that's kind of a half product, half service, because the product is what you're, the videos and the guide itself, but the service is all the research she did to get that information together.
And when we see Tara and River, you're going to see the same thing. Physical products are really hard, but incredible life teachers. And I mean, I knew that gumballs would be a pain in the butt, but I very picked gumballs young because you'd see the tangible ration of buying it and profit and all of that stuff. So they're such a pain in the rear. But for a teaching aid, physical products can be really good and a great start. But I love what you've done. I just love what you've done with the service. And furthermore, it enables a trip to Japan, something to look forward to, and an agenda and a schedule and a deep bond and the communication and all the things we talk about in Legato Family. So I love that you're doing that.
Perfect. So after somebody does the fish hatchery model, which is a really easy vetting thing to start with the business idea, like, and you really want to avoid, I always avoid that mud puddle or swamp, right? Nobody wants to be in a mud puddle trying to fish out little fishes, and they're just disgusting, except little boys that maybe, how little boys have like magnetic attraction to mud puddles? Bad business, great for children, like, for them to go play and get dirty, but not really great for business. So once you've done the where do you fish model, what's the next model that you go into with your
splash
model?
In the mud puddles, don't play in the mud puddles. And guys, it just blows me away, even how many fairly successful business guys try creating businesses in mud puddles. It typically resolves just because you're interested in knitting cat crochet sweaters does not necessarily mean the whole world is. And so you've just got to open up and realize that passion does not always equate to felt need. So you're right, Andrea. So that's the first model, and your kids will love that. And then once you have that, this is a little more sophisticated. I have to warn in advance, this is a little bit more technical, but this is so profound. I probably hear, I bet I hear on average 10 to 15 new business ideas that people say, Rich, what do you think? And this is the tool that I've used for years and years now. I've dummied it down. This is called the 5 Forces model. It was developed by Michael Porter out of Harvard. You can go read that book, and after you get done with that 2-hour nap, then come back and it'll make a lot more sense. But I've dummied it down. So really quickly you can identify the moving parts. So I'm going to draw this out now. You got my screen up? I hope I can do this on a nice little area. Scroll down. And now I'm going to drop. I'm going to leave that pencil up. So this has, I'm going to put them all in different colors just because I put that one in the wrong place. I got to erase that one. There we go. Let's put that one again. And here I go. I'm going to draw the boxes, and then I'll tell what you are. I don't know why my pencil is not working. My pencil is not working. That's a good thing. Thank you. Let's try that. Okay, here we go. That box there. I'm going to put that box down there. We're going to put this box over here. And we're going to put that box over here. And then I'm going to put my fancy box, the dotted line down here, because this is a rich ad. This is a do not pass go ad. Okay, so this right here is the 5 forces model. And as you go through this, all you do is you assign a plus or a minus. Is it positive? Do I have that strength or not? So it's all you do is put a plus or a minus as you go through this. The first one is, do I have power over the suppliers? Forgive my terrible handwriting, everyone. And buyers is the next. What are the subs? What are the subs? What are the substitutes? The next one is the competition. How intense is the competition? This middle one is vitally important, the most important in Michael Porter's world, and definitely in mine, so much that I added an extra box. And I'll explain this more, but what are the barriers to entry? What are the barriers to entry? Okay, let's do lemonade. We started with lemonade. Let's do lemonade. And I'm just going to do a little markup, so this is going to get really messy. Oh, no, the last one I've pulled out. This last one is a rich ad that I've got a new rule in anything I do. If I don't have an answer and can't check positive on the channel, I won't do it. I've now had 19 business failures in my adult career. 19. That's a lot of failing. Every one of those failed except for one. I only have one in 25, 30 years that failed because of anything other than channel. So, and I'll go more into channeling a little deeper, but basically what channel is do I have direct access to get to customers? Can I actually get to customers? Do I actually have a place to sell my product, or have I built it and then hoping people will just show up? But do I have a potential way to get in front of people to actually sell it? In the case of my son, Alex, we keep coming back to dog poop. What it is it's going and putting those posters on the doors of the neighborhood. Online is, do you have a big community that's following, or are you just going to create something and then go out of thin air? So let's go through and let's do the lemonade example, and then we'll try picking, let's do, I don't know, Andrea, I'll let you pick one that we do from there. But to follow this model right here, let's do a really bad example of why we shouldn't do lemonade. So now again, you're taking the 10 that passed and you're running it through this model. Now I'm not saying that if it has any negatives, don't do it. It's just be aware of it. And the more pluses you get, the more profitable and the easier the business will be to succeed. So lemonade, can I control and negotiate a better price from my supplier for sugar? Because lemonade is basically lemonade packet, which is sugar and lemons. So can I negotiate a better price for sugar? No. Can I negotiate a better price for the lemons at the grocery store or a significant discount? No. So that is a minus. Can I double my price of my lemonade on the stand? The buyers that I'm buying for, can I negotiate and have a better price for them? Now, if I'm at the end of a half marathon, as I did my walk this morning, I hit the end of a half marathon. I may be able to double the price of a nice glass of lemonade there, but probably on the street corner, I don't know. What can I charge? 50 cents? Yeah. Can I charge $1? If you're a really cute little kid, you can get away with $1. But Andrea, could you and I sell a cup of lemonade on the corner for $1? No. 50 cents? Probably not. 25 cents? Well, so location matters a lot, but the reality is that's a no. How many substitutes are there for lemonade? How many flavors of lemonade are there in the grocery store? We haven't even got into Coca-Cola and all the substitutes. We haven't even talked about water. We haven't talked about milk or juices or all the variants or the power drinks. That's like a double no. That's a double negative. There's so many substitutes. how intense is the competition? The competition of the soda vendors is, I was in a meeting one time where we'd invited, I'm not going to tell you which one, but there's Coke and Pepsi, and one of them came in. They saw the other brand in the room and refused to come in until we'd cleared it out of the room and put their beverage. That's intense competition. Okay, at what point you have Super Bowl ads taking place, that's minus. Barriers to entry. What barriers to entry is patents. It's the first to market. It's a huge financial investment that others can't. It's new intellectual capital. It's a brand name that no one else could have. It's a contract that someone else, that you could get and legally lock down. That's barriers to entry. So with my lemonade stand, let's see, it's basically sugar water, so I can't file any patents on it. Maybe you're really creative and can do Lucy's Lemonade or some brand, but it's probably pretty difficult. So, cost, not a let entry there, so that's also a minus. Then the question is channel. If I just go and sit on the corner, that's a channel, but not a very good one. So I can't answer that for you. People have often asked me, Rich, have you ever done anything like that? And the answer is yes. I have. One day per year, we can make a killing, and my kids have done this business for years. We have a home on the major parade route on the 4th of July that's right across from the announcer. And July the 4th is typically a nice, really steaming hot day. And if my kids will go and sell lemonade on that stand, they have the channel. And so every July 4th, my kids would make a couple of $100 selling lemonade and soda pop and water from that stand because they controlled the channel. So my rule is if you don't have a way to get to the channel, what is the dentist office example that everyone loved earlier? Well, if you're the dentist and you haven't, you can put the toothpaste on that's the channel. If you're the owner and need someone to clean it, you control the channel. So owning the channel is such a critical part of this. And my number one rule is if I don't have the channel, I don't go forward. That's personal business. Now, in the case of my kids, sometimes I'll let them learn that lesson, and because it's the most important lesson I think there is in business. Is every single pitch competition I've judged, the first question I have is, how are you going to get to the channel? So now we've done a negative example. Let's do a positive example. Andrea, I'm going to let you pick one here.
Sure. Let's do the shoe business my kids started. So, because I think I can walk you through it, and I have a question too about it.
Okay. We're going to do the shoe business. The power of the suppliers. Can they negotiate a better price from the suppliers of these shoes than anyone else?
No, okay, so in fact, it's even worse than that because there's such a limited supply. Nike's done such a good job of limiting the supply that they purchased a bot, like a computer bot, in order to make sure they would get them, that they could buy them from Nike when Nike drops them.
Okay. So we have got a minus on, I'm going to keep track of it. So everyone agrees lemonade, really stupid idea. Now we'd already vetted that out, but I needed to show a negative one. So we'd already thrown the lemonade out in the prior model. So the 10, likely you're not going to get a 6 minus, but if you do, so we're going to do shoes now. We've got a minus for Andrea in supplies. Buyers, can you charge a premium for these shoes once you get them? Absolutely, you can. Okay. What are the substitutes? Now, we're not just talking shoes in general, but we're talking of these specially branded, my son was way into Jordan or Donovan Mitchell and his Spida shoes. What are the substitutes for those shoes? Is there subs?
There's really not. There's only the other the other ones that I think are really popular are Yeezys. And I think that everybody who has a pair of one wants the other. So there's really not a lot of substitutes. Like those shoes are the holy grail of shoes right now.
So you've got one specific your band, and you've already, from this, you've already pushed way down into the fish hatchery because you went really specific on one brand, and people are pretty keyed up about it. It's like me and my Audis. I'm not going to drive something other than an Audi now. And so you've got them keyed up. So you've got a plus there. And there could be some confusion from the audience on that, but we'll come back to that plus. Okay, how intense is the competition on shoes? It's very intense. You got to give yourself a negative on that one.
Yeah, and it's very
Because
intense.
it is the competition to get the shoes is intense. The general big name shoes, it is intense, but yeah, so that's a minus. Barriers to entry. Can anyone do this? What's the knowledge or awareness of this in general? Is there any barriers to entry that you have that others don't have, your son?
So the crazy thing is that in order to get the shoes, it seems like that what Nike does is they drop them on their website between like 3 in the morning and 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so the barrier to entry is somebody willing to stay up all night to buy these shoes, which my son and his friends sit and do. I don't, because I like my sleep. But that's a huge barrier to entry. Like, you have to be so on point in order to get the shoes in the first place. Like, they live and breathe it almost. It's
so you've
crazy.
Got timing, you've got knowledge. Your kids know if you did this business, you would fail, but your son has knowledge of which shoes will work, which ones will not. Is it women's or is it men's? What is the sizing? He knows that. Most people wouldn't. So you get to take a plus on that. It's a small one. And what about capital? Most kids probably doing this, they're just buying and using the thing and are not business oriented. They're just buying them. So there's probably not, maybe the competition isn't as intense as we may think, because most are probably buying it. I'm going to leave that minus just to prove the point, but you could argue that through. By the way, this model, every business you run through, you're going to spend 20, 30 minutes discussing it. And that's good. You don't have to rush this thing either. If you spent a month coming with the idea or 2 weeks coming up with ideas, take 2 weeks to walk through the businesses and grade them as you go through.
Rich, I have a question about barrier to entry. Do you want it to be high so it's harder for people to enter that? Yes, that's what I thought. Okay.
You want barriers to entry here. I hate businesses that everyone else can do. It's like lemonade. What is lemonade? Well, it's sugar and flavoring. And all you need is a chicken sink, not a chicken sink. How about a kitchen sink? We're going to have a kitchen sink, not a chicken sink. Although sometimes I'm chicken of my kitchen sink. But come on, laugh, Andrea. That was funny. We're going to have a kitchen sink, and we're going to blend it with sugar and water, and we've just made soda pop. There's no barrier to entry in that. It takes nothing. So what you're going for is something that you can cross that most can't. The reason that the Tie a Tie site got so much traction is, first of all, most people at that point didn't even have video cameras to record it. Everyone else out there doing it was just written instructions, and we had terrible videos, but videos. Number two is most people didn't know how competitive or how much traffic and how non-competitive the term was. Third of all, we were first mover. So we had all these barriers to entry we passed that others couldn't. You're looking for things. And the one that I love the most is smarts and knowledges and insights that others don't have. If we were to run that helping grandma, it would have came out really positive. Helping the grandmas get their groceries and have social interaction, because most people weren't even thinking it's knowledge. They hadn't even thought through that problem. Anytime you see a problem, it typically means people haven't thought through and I can get competitive advantage and barriers to entry. I'm going to give you a plus on that one. So the last one, the most important, my rule is do not pass go. Even if this was all positive, if you do not have access to a channel that you can sell them, don't do it. So Andrea, this is everyone, double star on this one, double note. And this is the bomb. This is worth $10,000. What I'm about ready to tell you right now is ask this question. Where are you going to sell it? Do you have a channel that can already sell it before you buy the shoes?
Yeah. So what the kids did in this business is they sell it on Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji or Craigslist. So they just on their phones, upload them. and then they would do the back and forth with people. And then typically the transaction takes place in a parking lot, which is probably not the best thing to teach your kids to start with.
Well, actually it is.
But that's where it is, right?
Actually, it's brilliant. Just walk with them, give them a little latitude, and teach them how to identify scammers or not. And I hope like crazy. The biggest blessing I give you is I hope like crazy that your son gets ripped off once or twice with this, with a fake money order or something, and he loses a couple $100 to actually learn what the tricks are. So it's actually, what you said was a negative, but I think is one of the biggest opportunities there are. Just make sure that you're doing it carefully and buffered and controlled and in a safe environment. So you definitively have a plus, and you also added another plus to barriers to entry, because most people do not know how to. I suspect on the call, 9 out of 10 mothers or fathers don't even know how to run Facebook Marketplace, and your kid does. So go learn that from them. May help your business. Just saying.
Yeah. And Anne asked, do we consider doing an auction site to sell them? We haven't, but there's a site called StockX that you can resell them on. And I think that was a little bit more of a barrier to entry, and the kids just have been able to sell them in our own city. So that's why they haven't bothered with.
How long does it take them to sell a pair of shoes once they get them?
Oh, like a day or two sometimes.
Okay. So you see, that's the symbol of a vibrant channel. Should you ever go and buy 300 pairs of shoes on discount quickly, because that would put a bunch of supplier. But if your kid's playing with even 500, I don't know what he's earning, but I bet he's doing pretty good out of it. I bet it's paying for his gas money.
Yeah, it's paying for his gas money for sure. And but his biggest challenge is he can't get enough supply, because Nike is holding back supply, which is what's driving up the price and demand in general, right? So, and you can't control that.
So let's say that he went and negotiated a deal with the local shoe store, and the shoe store has the right to get 100 of them, and he negotiated the rights to be the first in and pay him retail, and it's already locked down. He just locked down not only the supply, but also the channel and extra pluses. So Andrea, clearly, and you don't have to give the details of, but this little shoe business, great business. We got three negatives, but we got 1, 2, 3 positives, and you control the channel. So the result is going to be, it's a profitable business that works, but it's not crazy. It's not like la goo goo land. And can I take 1 minute and walk through that? I don't know where we're at time-wise, Andrea.
No, go ahead. Yep, you're good.
Okay. So I want to walk through Google. The company Google, and let's play like we're Google. It's the best example that I know. Well, we could do the same thing now with Amazon, actually. But let's say that we're Google and we've just founded Google. Now, if we were trying to compete against Google, you could see it would come out the exact opposite of this. But Google, do they control the supply? Well, they are the supply. Do they control the buyers? It's the only place I know that they tell me how much they're going to pay, and they don't even tell me what percentage. They'll just control it, and they can charge $5 for a click, or $500 for a click, or $3, or anything they feel like charging, and they get away with it. What are the substitutes for Google? Well, there's Bing. How many of you out there are using Bing?
Dogpile, remember that? Yahoo, but none of us remember any of them.
Ask Jeeves. I don't know what percentage of the market they control, but if you're not saying 97%, you're making something up. How intense is the competition? There's no competition. Well, look, we're having a hard time even naming competition. How many patents do they have? How much worldwide mass do they have? How much intellectual capital do they have? Channel. They don't have to. They are the channel. Everyone just comes to them. I type on Google probably 20 times a day. So you got the result is a 6, 7-star business. And I've been to their headquarters multiple times, and they walk in and they hand you they fly in chefs every week from France or India and serve everyone lunch and give you a full day to play and do your favorite thing on little bouncy balls. That's because they have so much money that It's crazy. Highly profitable, highly lucrative. And although I'm not suggesting, I've only personally had 1 or 2 5-star businesses in my career, the more stars that you get, the more pluses you get, the more lucrative the company will be.
Thank you so much, Rich. So
this can I capstone
yeah.
it? This will take you to top 3. This will take you to top 3. And in order to get that, we don't have time today to go through that. But at that point, really any 3 of those businesses, and then I think in our other material that we'll be providing, making available, there's a very specific protocol that I've developed of how to drive to profitability, add the resources process, add the scale element so that you can grow the business into something meaningful like your son started to. Most people only hit the profitability and then it kind of wanes. But you can take it way beyond that in the other content I have. Now, I always will run it through a 3rd tool, but we just don't have time to do that today. And honestly, at this point, you've eliminated all the real dogs anyways. You've really eliminated all the gunky gunk. To use our Alex analogy, all the dog poop is now in the bucket.
So that wraps this up really nicely. So basically take all of your ideas, run them through the fishing model first, bring them down to your top like 10 or 12, at which point take those top 10 or 12, run them through the Porter model and spend some time until you get to 3 that have some decent numbers. And then from there,
let your kid pick.
Yeah,
at that point, let them make the decision and talk through it. I went through this exact process with Alex, my youngest son. This is exactly what, I'm not just saying that. And although he'd saved for his mission in college years ago, he wanted the 16-year-old rites of passage experience that I've had with each of my sons. And so this studio is the result of what he wanted to do.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're going to talk about the zigzag model that Rich just mentioned. So he's actually going to talk about how can you take that business and turn it into something, and what's the really simple model to get them up and off the ground and running. And then also, Rich, we had somebody request that you talk about the family economy a little bit more, and I'd love for you to dig into that a little bit more after the break. And we have 2 really special guests that are going to join us and talk about the business that they've started and how they've started it. And you can hear from some teenagers that have actually done a great job of starting a business.
I am so excited. Of all the things today, I'm so excited to see my dear friends River and Taryn again. So you guys definitely you're in for a real treat. This is 2 incredible young men, 12-year-old young men that have created their own business and brand with passion and honesty, done every bit of this and maybe on steroids.
Perfect. So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then when we come back, we will pick up where we left off. Thanks, guys. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a nice break, maybe like a little bit of movement, a little bit of water, some food if that was worked out for you. Welcome back. So we're going to switch the schedule up just a little bit from what I said before we went to the break, and Rich is going to start with interviewing River and Taryn Greenfield. They are some super great guests of ours. We're delighted that they agreed to join us today. They are 13, and they are the founders of a podcast called Go Greenfields. And it's a podcast, a website. They've just done a remarkable job with their business. And so I'm going to turn it over to Rich, who's going to interview River and Taryn and talk about the business that they built.
Hi, River and Taryn. Are you guys there?
Yes. Hello.
It's so good to see you guys again.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I was able to spend a couple of days with River and Taryn. And these are amazing young men. I made one mistake. I said you were 12. You're actually 13. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And if there's any questions here, yes, River and Taryn are identical twins. And they are such amazing young men. So for all of our guests, you need to tell the secret. Is there any way to tell the 2 of you apart?
Well, the way we tell apart is just I'm not him. But for people who don't really know us that well, it's kind of hard. But I have like one freckle on the right side of my face, and Taryn has it on the left side. But that's the only one I know.
Okay, so you've got a freckle on the left side of your face. That was my cheat code, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm I'm so happy to see you guys again. And first of all, I just want to congratulate you for building a business.
Thank you.
Would you tell me if you could, by the way, these young men are amazing artists. You should see how beautiful they draw and how creative they are. I think there's a future business there. I'm just saying.
Maybe a future one.
Let me ask this question. What was the initial thing that caused you to think that you wanted to build a website called Go Greenfields?
Well, we wanted the name to be, we started off with cooking because we really enjoyed cooking a lot, but we also wanted the name to be versatile so we don't have to just do cooking, so we can also do anything else like later on if we want to change what the podcast would be about. So we kind of went along the lines, so we gave ourselves a little bit of wiggle room to change it if we want to, but so far it's been mainly cooking.
Yeah, and we've also like interview other chefs and go to restaurants and taste and stuff. It's really fun.
So specifically, tell everyone, tell all the listeners what your business does. That's the first thing that we'd like to know.
We do recipes and kind of change them to be healthier, or like take national days that are like, because National Watermelon Day or something, and then make a recipe off of that, or just fun little contests and food things that we can do, interviews and restaurant reviews, stuff like that.
And also teaching people how to cook in healthy ways.
Yeah.
So that you can be healthy and you know how to cook, and they're just some fun recipes.
And I've tasted your recipes. You guys have actually, how many 13-year-olds do you know that actually cook gourmet meals? Well, you're looking at two of them right there, and I've tasted their food, and it's delicious.
Thanks.
What gave you this idea? What prompted you to want to do this cooking program?
Well, we've just really enjoyed cooking just kind of our whole lives. I think the first time we like really started cooking was when our mom went out to go like feed our animals and stuff, and we made her scrambled eggs. And then after that, we just started making more and more dishes. And then our dad was like, hey, you should make a podcast. We're like, oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So we just started a podcast, and it's kind of changed a little bit, but
well, yeah, we started out, we went to a restaurant and our dad just had the bright idea of us starting a podcast. So we started out with like audio only, and it was just this like nice little pizza place, and it was kind of bad at the start, but we're getting better at it. So.
How long have you been doing this, Reverend Taryn?
Like
3 to 4 years, I think.
3 to 4 years, maybe 5. I don't know.
So you started when you were 9 years old.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And you had mentioned that your dad suggested the idea. How did that go? What did you guys want to just do it, or was there any other decisions, or what led you to deciding specifically to do this?
At the start, I didn't really want to do it, but then we started talking it over and I thought it would be really fun.
I was all for it. I was like, yeah, podcast, cool. Because our dad has a podcast too, and I kind of wanted to do something that he did too.
Okay, that's so fun. And I love it that you guys were self-expressing, that you both felt that way. So how did you reconcile to both agree to really do it and to cooperate?
Because after we started talking about it, I decided that it would be really fun to do it. So I kind of got in the same boat as him after we started like planning out more what we were going to do.
And it's just, we kind of go like free flow and stuff. So it's a little bit more fun for us.
Let me ask this question. Do we each have individual assignments on the podcast in your business, or do you just kind of both do a little of everything?
We both do a little of everything, but we have to just like say who is who. So I would say like, River, would you like to do this? And he was like, yes, I would, Taryn. And so people don't get confused.
And I'm the one who has to make sure all the everything gets like corrected in the right folders and stuff, so that we can have it all made correctly and stuff.
Great. Okay, so I'm just going to make a comment quickly, and then I want to finish the interview. Everybody, I hope that you noticed and picked up on a few of these cues of how they came to agreement to do it, but also they planted a very interesting little cue. And that is your dad already does podcasts, right?
Yeah.
And so he already knew how to do that, and so that was kind of a cheat code to help you guys get started, because your dad already kind of had a channel. We've talked a lot about channel, or able to get to individuals. Tell us a little bit how that went down. How did you get started initially so you got a following, River and Taryn?
Well, we didn't have like a phone or anything, so we had to get like a phone so that we could actually and then we had this little microphone that connects to the phone. So then basically you get like an app, and then you can basically speak into the microphone, and it all like downloads onto an app. And then basically
portable, easy.
we just took the podcast and we downloaded it, fixed it up and stuff.
We just take it to we would take it to restaurants and review the restaurants and taste stuff. We started out with restaurant reviews only and like only audio, but then when more people started to notice, they asked for video and different things. So we started doing recipes and interviews, and we do almost all video now. So
how often do you guys post?
Twice a month.
Yeah, twice a month.
But we're usually making podcasts like 4 times a month.
Yeah.
So about how much time per month do you spend doing this?
We spend like probably a week and half a week to 1 week on one podcast, and then we do like 4 podcasts per month. So around like half the month.
Usually one podcast takes like 2 to 3 days to make.
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, you guys okay if I just keep asking lots of questions? Because I'm sure everyone's just like gigging out on this. By the way, it's so good to see you guys again. I've really missed not hanging out with you guys.
I know, it was so fun.
We had a great time together, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. It was really fun.
These 2 young men may be 2 of the most respectful, highly intelligent young men I've ever met. And I got to tell you, I can't wait to see what you do with your lives. I absolutely am so excited to see where you land. So I want to ask this question. What has it done with your relationship with your mom and dad, and how has that has it helped, or is there any contention, or what has it done to your relationship with mom and dad?
Well, they like it when we make dinner for them, so that helps.
That's really good.
And mom sometimes is like a special guest, and she helps us taste or helps us with a recipe or with a technique that we might not know yet, and she kind of explains it because she's also a super good chef. Dad's really good at meats, but he's not as good at like baking and stuff. Mom's kind of good at all around, so she's really good at that.
It just gets us all in the kitchen and stuff, and we all kind of like make fun dishes and stuff, and sometimes we create big messes and then we spend the next hour cleaning it all up. That's kind of like, it's basically just getting our whole family together. Yeah.
So, and all the listeners, this is the Legato family of unifying and building family content and events. And it's very evident that this has impacted these young men. Tell us about how you initially got it started as far as getting the first customers. What did you do, the very first thing to go and get some customers, the first people watching it? How did you first get visible?
I think most of... probably our first customers were our family, but like our dad also kind of like, he said it a little bit on his show and stuff, so that helped us a lot. And then after that, we just kind of grew with more people.
Yeah, we also, our grandma Pat also owns a restaurant, and she likes it a lot too. So
that's amazing. So everyone noticed that was cheat coded just a little bit to really help him get it off the ground, and that's exactly what you do. All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and then maybe 2 more questions. We may sneak one more in there, and then you guys can make any comments you want. So has this helped you financially? What has this done financially?
Well, we get sponsors, and then we use mostly food sponsors, and then they send us the food, and then we use their food in a thing, and kind of give like little cues and little audios of like, this is sponsored by this, and we use it, and a certain amount of people buy it, and then we get the money from that, and that's kind of how we get the money from it.
And basically we use the money for like buying stuff, ingredients, paying some of our like social media people, because we don't really have a phone that actually has any like social media things.
We just don't go on social media that often.
We have like developers and stuff that help us out a lot. So we use money for that too.
So are you responsible for buying some of your own stuff and financially being accountable and responsible for your own?
We have a certain card that we use that is kind of like meant for that.
Yeah, it comes from our accounts, and we make the money into the card.
So you're kind of paying your own way based on this business you've created at 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I think your mom and dad are pretty amazing. That's all that I can say. And I think there's only 2 individuals I know that are more amazing, and their name is River and Taryn.
No, our dad and mom are better.
Hey, let me ask this question. How many users do you have on your podcast?
I think our YouTube channel has like 100 and something subscribers, and then our actual listeners are like 300 to 400-ish.
I think it's a lot more than that, actually.
Okay,
I think
maybe I don't know what that
It might
was,
be.
but-
I'm pretty sure it's like a thousand, maybe 2,000, something like that.
That is amazing, you guys. That is just so amazing. And I just want to just compliment you guys and tell you how highly I think of you and just how well you've done there. And this is the real deal, you guys. Is there any question what these young men are going to do in their life with that context at 13 years old? Tell us now how we can get your website and what your podcast is so the users can get to it.
It's basically just gogreenfields.com, and it's basically podcasts and recipes and stuff. And we also have a YouTube channel and Instagram and stuff like that.
Yeah, and we do a thing called Q&A where people can ask us funny questions and then we'll answer them at the end of the episode. And that's always fun if you want to ask questions too. So.
That's amazing. Well, I can't wait for everyone to come and join your podcast and watch your video channel. Is there anything else you guys would like to share with the listeners today, River and Taryn?
Starting a business is really fun. It's hard, but it's fun.
I don't have any.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from starting your own business? What if there's one thing that says, man, I didn't know that before and I've really learned this, what would that be?
Probably
It takes a lot of steps and stuff to get a
Behind the
video,
scenes.
something out. If you're adding like animations, and if you're cooking the whole recipe and making sure it doesn't go wrong or something, also takes a little while. So you have to put your mind into it, definitely, for sure. You can't just kind of go like, maybe I'll do something simple.
I'd probably say siblings are really good co-hosts.
Well, it's so fun to watch you two just almost symbiotically just kind of complement each other, and you can tell what kind of podcast River and Taryn are doing. So here's the last question. This is mostly parents watching today. This isn't kids. This is mostly adults. So I'd like you to give them advice of what they should do to help get their kids doing a business.
Maybe study what they like and give them suggestions and
Help them out and
Yeah.
stuff, and let them definitely let them do what they want to do, because I feel like if you do what you want to do, it definitely helps put more impact into it,
Yeah.
because
or do what you know.
it gives you
That's really good.
they work harder and stuff.
You know what I think, Andrea? I don't think you and I even need to be heard all. We should just let Reverend Taryn teach all the content here. I think they've got this rock star, don't you think? I think they just gave the same advice, but much simpler. Okay, Reverend Taryn, I just want you to know how highly I think of you, and I'm grateful that you're my friends. And just let us know any way we can help. We'll make positive that we get a link. Andrea, can we make sure we get a link and include that also to their podcast and their videos? And let's really attempt to support them.
Yeah.
Reverend Taryn, thank you so much for joining us today. You get the final word. Is there anything else you would like to say or talk about before we say goodbye to you?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this, and I'm excited for you guys, if you are going to listen, to see some of our podcasts.
Yeah.
So would you encourage parents to build a business with their kids? Has it been a meaningful thing for you?
It's been really fun, and I think it helps understand what you have to do and how to manage your money and stuff.
That's amazing, guys. Well, it's so good to see you again. I can't wait to be together. You guys reach out to me at any time and just know how highly I think of you. And you guys just have a wonderful Saturday. Thank you for taking a few minutes to come and hang out with me today.
Yeah.
Thank
It was
you.
fun.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, see you later.
We'll see you later.
That was fantastic. Thanks for
Andrea,
that.
I don't know we even need to say much more. I mean, you can talk all you want about it, but you get two 13-year-olds self-expressing, you know what that's doing to their relationship. And I think the money, the financial, that's what amps everyone up and shoots them to the moon. And we can do it. This program and this modeling that I just arrogantly, but it works. It just dead works. But that's not what really matters, Andrea. It's not what really matters. It's preparing those kids. I mean, is there anyone on here that has any doubt that those kids are going to do they're 13 years old. And although they're talking like 13-year-olds, they're acting more like, well, not 23-year-olds, 33-year-olds. You darn well know that those kids are going to be financially independent. They're going to take control. They're going to be responsible. And it was all as the metaphor of their parents putting in place a family economy, putting in place a family structure, grounding the values, and then letting the metaphor of business and adding value take place. I mean, I just think that was, I wish you would have started with that, actually. It was that good. It's one thing to see my kids now post-mortem. It's quite another to see someone who's doing it properly. And just hat tip to Ben and Jessica Greenfield. Just hat tip, because, I mean, you saw the results of what they're doing right in the middle of it.
Yeah. Rich, can you talk about the family economy a little bit? That's a couple of questions that we had earlier.
Yeah, I haven't talked a lot about that, but I think Reverend Taryn actually hit it, and we don't need to go over it. We don't need to overbake that, but it's just helping your kids understand that things have costs associated with it, has responsibility associated with it. It's the concept of when you received a pair of tennis shoes, did it mean more when you bought them yourselves or if you just had them gifted to you? It's helping your kids understand at a very early age and simple. And you saw that Reverend Taryn, it wasn't like over advanced, but they knew that they had expenses. They had to buy a social media person and they got a video for the first time. And there was guardrails on that video because they weren't social media themselves. And there was revenue that was coming in from, they knew it was sponsorship and they knew that they were selling some recipes and they understood what it took to generate revenue and value. It was basically the family economy, even in the family. Just because you got my genes does not necessarily mean you get everything handed to you, right? It's winning the gene lottery or losing it is we can control our own destiny. And so, Andrea, I could share what we did. Is that of help? Is that what you're going for?
Yes,
very young age, and I do it with my little granddaughters. They're coming over tomorrow. I can't wait because the thing they love to do is grab grandpa's hands and go do chores or feed the chickens or pick some basil or something, knowing that there will be financial rewards associated with their compensation. Then if you couple that with a money allocation model, what are the expenses? What were the cost of the gumballs? So you actually understand the difference between revenue and profit and expense. That's simple. And then based on that, we put in place a 4-jar system. And when our kids were old enough to talk and walk, 2 or 3, we did it. And this metaphor is carried forward. It's actually the model my wife and I still use. But we have 4 jars that the kids, we'd always pay it in increments of 10. So this worked really well when they were younger. The first jar, the first thing we teach them is to give 10% to charity, to give 10% away, to give to humanity, and to give it for needs, to give what we believe, in Christian philosophies of God was blessed us deeply. So give 10% away. That was the first 1 out of 10 pennies. The next 3 were long-term savings. So that's where you heard Timmy and Alex talk about, no, we've got to save for our own college or our own long-term out there. So long-term savings is the next 30%. Then the next 30% is short-term savings. Ooh, I'm trying to save for those dance slippers, or I'm trying to save for that video game, or I'm trying to save to buy a new baseball mitt, or something shorter term. Oh, we're going to Disneyland. I need to save some money there. So that was in the 3rd jar. In the 4th jar, it's spending. That's the mad money that I can spend now as I want to meet my daily personal needs. And then so it started with physical jars, and even my grandkids, I always make sure that I give them in increments of 10, and they got their little jars, and wow, do they ever know how to get grandpa to overcompensate them. But nonetheless, it's a great lesson, right? And so that jar system then carries forward to that same metaphor, carries forward into saving and checkings accounts with the same purpose. And then it can get more sophisticated as adults. But I think most adults don't even learn that basic thing. So I think also delineating, Andrea, between, part of it is just family contribution. How can I contribute? Like when we're out weeding the garden, most of the time it's like, no, that's what we do. And then there's certain other things that they know that they can generate revenue and income from. And then seeing my wife and I not hiding the finances, but actually bringing forward at a young age and letting them see the expenses associated with my wife's real estate and how much insurance costs. I mean, how many young adults wake up and insurance? What is that? Well, my kids saw on a very young age that insurance is very expensive, and health insurance costs money, and rental insurance and all of that, and then the cost of cleaning. So seeing the inflow and the outflow and going to the bank and seeing what it costs and what it takes was just immensely valuable. The result, quite frankly, I'd trust my 18-year-old son to run money more than 9 out of 10 financial advisors in the world, just because they grew up in an economy that they actually saw how all the mechanics were working at a young age. River and Taryn very evidently had that experience. At what point they're pointing out their expenses and their income and a special credit card for that and the cost for dinner and getting their food comp that they're cooking, they understand the concept of family economy.
Thank you so much. That's so helpful overall. Before we dive into the rest of the Q&A, can you talk a little bit about the zigzag model?
Yeah. And I think I'll pull up the screen again to do that really quickly. I'm not going to do a deep dive on it, but it is the metaphor that we've used. This is a profound, simple model that makes sense, and it's really a lean startup model. In 2012, I wrote a book called The Zigzag Principle. It was a national bestseller, and it was basically just lean startup modeling of a metaphor that came to me when I was climbing in the Himalayas, about how going directly steep up the top of Mount Everest would result in death of myself and my family. And so there was actually incredible value in zigzagging to our success rather than going directly for our goals. Now, intuitively, this makes sense. When you drive to the store, you don't go directly to the store. You zigzag to get there. When you're skiing, if you ski directly down the mountain slope, you will die and break your neck if you go directly to the bottom of the mountain. So metaphorically, the concept of zigzag just is how we live our lives. But in business, we're taught to build a pro forma model, to set goals and go directly for our goal and do not pass goal. And the result is like 1 out of 20 new businesses succeeds. I don't like those odds. I don't like them even one little bit. And it gets worse if you're taking capital because it funds long-term successes. So the model of how I climbed the mountain with my young kids in the Everest region, which was zigzagging up to Namche Bazaar, hanging out for a day, having some apple pie, then going over to the Tengboche Monastery and chanting with the monks for a day, and then going to Kumjung, and going very indirectly allowed us to get, my 7-year-old, we got him to like 18,000 feet, staring right up the throat of Mount Everest, but it took us a month to do it. And in business, we think oftentimes charging directly to our goal results in success. I think most of the time it leads to failure. So the zigzag principle is nothing more than a metaphor with 10 very sequential steps in it. And Andrea, maybe what I'll do is I'll skip by the firm foundation. I'll skip over the firm foundation. We cover that elsewhere. And I'll just very quickly give a flyby on the model. Is that okay? I'm going to cover the guidance system, and I'm going to cover the zigs and the zags. So if you want to switch to my screen quickly, I always work in sets of 3. Zig, zag, zig. Most people, the reason fell so much is they increase the angle of declination and try going directly up with a steep angle. The way I don't slip down Mount Everest is pull it down. The way in business is I pull it down. Zig number 1 is always, I call it dancing in my tutu, but oftentimes doing something I don't want to do. oftentimes a service-based business, but it teaches me a ton. My first zig is always to drive for profit. What is the quickest path to profitability that I can find that is in scope of my goal? I'm never going to go zipping directly up. I'll never run directly personally. I'll never run directly for building an app. I will get in the sector and I will do something that quickly gets me to profitability, typically in service or a simple product that gets me to learn a ton. I then will guardrail it. That's the guardrail, and I'll talk about that in a second. I then will hit the guardrail. I will then drive and turn really quickly and go to adding resource and process. I hate this part because it's a little bit laborious, but it's when you start adding individuals and people and processes so that you get constancy. I think everyone pretty much agrees that McDonald's is just terrible, awful food. But it's consistently terribly and awful, exactly the same every single time. And so many companies fail because they don't get the constancy. So getting resources and processes in place to doing what you did to get to profitability. We're stuck on Alex's dog poop business today, but it's a great little model. When he did it, he got to profitability very quickly, but it wasn't realistic for him to run around to 100 houses a week and pick up the dog poop and still go to school. So he then added resources, and quite frankly, he failed in his processes because he didn't have constancy, and we ended up with a few instances, lack of use of drug, and maybe or maybe not, I won't deny or confirm, but there might have been some dog poop that accidentally ended up on a doorstep rather than in a bucket, and the processes didn't get really clean. And so Zig 1 is always drive to profitability. Zag 2 is always add resources and processes, make the turn with a guardrail, and the last element is always a scale element. And oftentimes, even here, I'm profitable, great. I typically lower my margins, but more revenue here. And then going for the scale element, it'll oftentimes take 1, it didn't work. 2, didn't work. 3, didn't work. It'll take multiple times, but at what point you get to scale element, that's what that pizza coupon was with 120 websites, a whole bunch of replicated websites. We're off climbing on Machu Picchu or in vacation, and it's making my son say, I'm wondering how much money we made today while we were snorkeling. Flip on the phone. Wow, that was awesome. It not only paid for snorkeling. That's the scale element and the one where we all desire. But if we charge directly towards the scale element to begin with, the odds go way, way, way down. This has got so systematic for me now that I just know if I create 3 businesses, 1 will fail, 1 will be mediocre, and 1 will become a multi-million-dollar business. So the question then becomes of how quickly can I do it and how can I get the failures out as quickly as possible? And so that's where the concepts of guardrail comes in. And Andrea, that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm going to talk about guardrails. I'm not going to talk about planting hidden treasures and all the more in-depth stuff. I think that we go into that with actually the program that we have in great detail. So we'll just set that context, but it's so important to have guardrails in your life and in your children's lives. And that's how you do the safe space. I always put 4, not 1, not 2, not 3. I always put 4. You can put more than that, but I always have 4. Every business I create, every business that my sons created, we would in advance go through those 4. First of all is how much money are we going to put towards this attempt to get to profitability? In Alex's case, it was the cost of some copy paper. Most of the times it's more than that, $50, $100, $500. Where are we going to come up with that? So the first is how much money? That's the first guardrail. The second is what's I'm going to do the amount of time. You heard River and Taryn actually give both in their response, but how much time per week do you put to it? I think that question was asked earlier, and I think for a teenage business, realistically, if you have more than 10 hours per week, you maybe have your kid doing that, and it turns into a burden rather than not a delight, but brain damage. So don't build a business where they can't be on the cheer club, they can't have any friends over, and they're stressed out and missing sleep and flunking their classes. That's stupid. So how much time per week are you going to allocate? 5 hours, 10 hours? When I'm starting businesses, typically I give it 20 hours. So the amount of time and then the quantity quantity of time. I mean duration of time. We did quantity of time. The next one is duration of time. I typically give a venture 3 months. I suggest most that I work with, they give it 6 months to a year. But again, I think that's the most variable. The money doesn't matter to me. People say, why do you do it with such small amounts of money? I'll tell you why. Because I want to, if I can't get the business profitable, I want to run out of money and force the failure really, really quickly. So how much time duration are you going to give yourself to get the business viable? Is it 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? Stupid. 2 years, you've just wasted half the teenager's life. So you've got to guardrail the amount of time you're driving to profitability. And if you can't get it to profitability, cut its head off. Cut the business's head off, not your kid's head off. Cut the business's head off and go back to one of the other options and try again. And if my odds hold true, and what's happened is my kids actually in their adulthood have got a lot better at this than I have. They've got more vigorous with the zigzag model than I did, because they run about 50% of theirs or succeed. So then the variable just becomes, how quickly can I fail this thing? There is a fourth that I haven't mentioned, and I think it's probably, for me, the most important. Intellectual capital plus relationship capital equals financial capital. The most important thing to me is not the money. It's actually not the smarts. I'm not the smartest egg in the room most of the time, but boy, do I ever have powerful relationship capital, because I've served a lot of it. So I very carefully protect and guardrail my relationship capital. My general rule is, if a relationship's so critical, important to me, but a little fresh, then I don't expose them to the business too quickly until it's succeeding, because I don't want it to burn out if it's one of the failures. So the people that I will allow and to maybe take my kids' business to, or to get involved, as either people that know me so well and love me so much that they know, it's 1 in 3, great, have a blast, Phil, hey, Rich, let's go golfing. That's the kind of person. Or that maybe it's distance enough that it's like, I'll go for the 4th or 5th target of the channel, never the first in that phase. And keeping in mind, I've done so many of these darn businesses, it's like, I just don't want to fry my relationship capital. So those 4 are the primary guardrails that I put in place. How much money, how much quantity of time, duration of time, and relationship capital. And I'll actually write down and guardrail those. And if I can't get that business to profitability, but off its head comes, go back to the drawing room, lick wounds for a little bit, and then start over another time. And I know, Andrea, that was a 60,000-foot flyby. I know that the other content we have is a lot deeper and will make a lot more sense and walk through that, but that's the concept in a nutshell.
Rich, that's fantastic. It totally goes over everything that you need to talk about with the Zigzag principle. And I know in our program for helping kids build businesses, the Futurepreneur program that we've developed, you go way deeper into Zigzag and how to implement that more with your business.
Great. What else have we got to talk about, Andrea? I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have. We actually are going to talk just briefly for any of you who are interested. We've actually developed a program that I just mentioned called Futurepreneur, which is a complete program that goes through not only how you can like dig deep into building a business with your kids, but also like take the talents that they have and set the stage for their success in the future, cultivate their entrepreneurial mindset when they're young, so that it's just the beginning. And we're just going to walk through right now what that program is, if anyone's interested in participating in it. So this program will actually, and Rich, I had to twist his arm a little bit to see if he would develop this program, because it's something he's been asked to do in the past and not done. And so he agreed and said that he would. And basically, the program will teach your kids to find a business, start a business, create a business to control their financial future, and all the how to implement it. Because I realized today we covered some broad strokes, but there's a lot more how to that Rich will actually show you. So walking through all the models and ways to do this. And I think the thing that we love to think about is like, what would it feel like if your 12-year-old kid was making an extra $200 a week for them? Would that be a great win for them? Because that's what the program will teach. So the Futurepreneur program will help your children build a business that they can frame their life with and build their own financial future. and it will give them something that's like fresh and fun and ready to go for. We specifically developed this program, and we're right at the beginning of, this is the first time we've offered it to anybody. So we've developed it to look for anyone looking to nurture that entrepreneurial mindset in their kids, looking for business model and resources, giving you more examples than what we gave you here. Also, anyone who wants to put that solid foundation in place with your kids and your family to help them start a business. And the course will teach you specifically how to utilize opportunities that you already have, how to create confidence and build your kids up. We talked about that just briefly today, but how to really create confidence with your kids, how to determine a good idea versus a bad idea, which we talked a little bit about today. There's actually multiple other models in the program that you can use to help your kids get that critical thinking skill, and how to set boundaries. Rich just briefly mentioned too about guardrails and how they work, how to get to profitability quick, and how to fail efficiently so every opportunity is a learning tool. Ultimately, we want to raise successful change maker kids. Some of the lasting benefits of the program, and we had some conversation about this a little bit, is that your kids will control their future now, and they won't be a burden to you as parents. You know, not that we ever think of our kids as burdens, but man, it's sure nice to know that you've got independent humans out there. Rich promises, well, not promises, but he did say, hey, how great is it that the kids will like fund your retirement and pay for your family holidays, and they won't be entitled, and they'll be employing themselves and maybe you, and they'll be their own boss in the future as well, and teach them to control their future and learn accountability now. So if you're interested in investing in your kids and receiving the dividends for your whole family, this is what's included. It's an 8-module course that's video with Rich, and then there's insight into the zigzag model principle for profitability, an interactive detailed workbook. We've got a great workbook that we developed for you, and it's all ready to go at the beginning of October. So Rich, the first question I have is, can you share a kid-friendly definition of how to explain the markets? Susan asked that, like, how do you explain the 4 different types of markets to kids?
I'm not sure. The types of markets.
Yeah, the fish markets.
Oh, how to explain it to the kids?
Yeah, how do you explain felt need to the kids in like a little bit more kid-friendly way?
The one I struggle with most is the word felt need. That's why I had you have a whack at it. So the concept there is just how badly do you want it. I think you just say how you have to have it versus I can live without or with it or without it. So the way I describe it is I would walk through an example with them, just like I did. I would just take something and start identifying examples of mud puddle. Well, let's see. Magic mark or a pen is a pen that is specially covered for your elementary school. Is that strong felt need, and just walk through examples. I would just start picking things and just saying, where does that fit? That's how I would do it. If your kid's have never fished before, that's going to be a little bit more challenging. But for anyone who has fishing in the ocean and just got sick and thrown up makes a lot of sense versus puddle versus swamp. Andrew, I don't know if I have a great answer. Normally I have a really good solid answer on that, but I don't know if I have one other than just start walking through and using the model. I love that model because most young adults that I'm talking with, it turns on really easily and it's less complex than the Porter model. So I think I would just take a good example and plug it in. That lemonade example was a really good one. I would just take their business ideas and start walking through it. Andrea, do you have thoughts there?
I do. I also think that the best way to explain the felt need of a market to your kids is just think about what your kid likes the most. So my son, when he was littler, was a big Toy Story fan, and he really wanted Buzz Lightyear. And he wanted the Buzz Lightyear so bad. It was like this big Buzz Lightyear thing that he wanted really bad. He was about 3, right? And I remember him asking for it and wanting it. And that was like the only thing he wanted. I just want this Buzz Lightyear. Can I please have the Buzz Lightyear? And so when he was older, if I had to explain target markets to him, I would have used Buzz Lightyear as an example, right? Like for him, Buzz Lightyear was a huge felt need because he had to have Buzz Lightyear, because that's what he was watching. Whereas for his sister, who wasn't as into Toy Story, because she was a few years later and she tended to be into different things, the felt need wasn't the same for her. And so I would think about, what is it, something that your kid can really relate to because they already have a deep felt need for that, and explain that to them, and then the felt need, and then find places. I think this is just a great way you can show it to them on a regular basis, is find places where their needs are high, like their felt needs are high, and just point it out to them. So at the end of, if you've ever done a 5K race or a 10K race with your kids, like at the end of the Spartan race, that drink they give you is really, really good because you're thirsty and you just worked really hard for it. Versus if they gave you the same drink at the beginning of the race, you're just not as interested in it because you didn't work as hard for it. So just using examples in every day and watching for it so that they get the idea of how to meet people, or how to like always be thinking about what's driving people and what's giving them a need.
I think there's another thing we really need to hit here really quickly that we haven't, and that is getting out of the me mindset to the we mindset. So the biggest, I judge tons and tons of business competitions, particularly colleges. And as soon as I hear we're building this for other college students, I ask the question, okay, are they all cheap or do they have money to spend? So getting your kid to start asking the question of, what does grandma or grandpa or someone with money, what's their strong felt needs? It's one thing to identify your own. It's another to identify people who actually have money and resources. So I think that that's something we haven't covered that's really an important variable, is getting them out of the mode of adding value to other people. Like the dog poop on the doorstep or on the lawn was no big deal to Alex. He could care less, but he knew it was a really big deal to Jerry Hawks and these other neighbors. And so he identified the need of others, the felt need of others. So I think it's good to show them their felt need and then start asking the question, what is the strong felt need of Grandpa? What's the strong felt need of Mr. Smith? What's the felt need of Miss Nancy? And then get them to start looking at that too, because they're more likely to make money out of that than they are their friends selling each other products and services.
Yeah, very true. Get them thinking about other people's needs and what drives other people early on. We're going to open the floor for questions too. I know that the form's been put in a few times, but if anybody has any questions that you want to like come off mute and ask Rich, you can do that as well. And then you don't have to just hear our voices anymore. So if anyone has any of that, if you could just kind of like raise your hand, there's a little hand raise chat down there. Rich, another one I have is, would you ever use incentives to get your kids to start this journey?
Would I ever use what?
Incentives or bribes, maybe.
Well, I mean, what of us aren't incentivized? I mean, I think it can be used positive. Absolutely 110%. My favorite bribe to get and to give and to receive is food and dinners or whatever. So absolutely I would. I just would make sure that it's, I mean, because we've got to cultivate the soil at least to get it going. You saw not River, but Taryn. Taryn was on our left, and he said, initially I wasn't like really into it, but then I got thinking, and he obviously received a little bit of bribe and a little bit of jump start there, and that's okay. It's okay to till the soil so it's ready to receive the planting, but at what point you start forcing and contriving, particularly your will, that's when we get into real trouble.
Sherry, do you want to come off mute and ask your question? Go for it.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I couldn't find the hand raised. Thank you, because it's been such a great session. The question I have is, you seem to really let your children have free reign. So what I'm asking is, how much do you provide sort of the base, like in terms of marketing and advertising and IP and, you know, I talked about what's a good business and what maybe won't succeed. How much do you provide in terms of the basis and then, or the foundation, and then let them just go and do it and then maybe just check back with you?
No, I think that there's got to be, it's not just check back, particularly in the early stages, it's hand holding. It's just like the first time your 5-year-old or 6-year-old goes to kindergarten, you don't just send them out the road. Good luck with that, figure it out. You hold their hand, you walk across the street, and bit by bit by bit. So the reality is I remain very actively involved and engaged throughout, and I'll discuss, this is a resource I have. What resources do you have? What availability do you have? And so I absolutely remain actively. And quite frankly, it's half the joy. I loved where River and Taryn was saying, oh yeah, Mama, our mom is a featured guest. I mean, let's be real what that really is. That's mom helping and making sure we get the sourdough to rise properly. So that's okay. That's more than okay. So I absolutely use whatever resources are in your life. I always say I hate the word cheat because it's not cheating. It's jumpstart the system and use what resources you have. If you're a flower decorator and you're doing stems, then figure out a new kind of flower, some leaves or something. Whatever you have at your disposal, don't be afraid to use and plug in. And you don't have to just do, I mean, I'm a technologist, I'm kind of a geek, and so that ended up being my way. Use what resources you have and absolutely be involved and jumpstart things, particularly the first couple of 3, 4 times. It's exactly that thing. If you're holding your junior and high school's kids to school, we have a whole new conversation we need to have. But I hope you hold your hand of your kindergartner the first day and walk them to school. And so for me, it's that guardrail concept and safe ground of just bit by bit by bit pulling it back until they become better at it than I am. And then I want to be killed by my children. I might want my sons to kill their father. I just want it to be in the form of games or smarter, not actually physically killing me. Did that help?
It did, thank you. And so are there sort of children-friendly resource or like age-appropriate resources, or you're the one who provides the vast majority of the guidance, I assume, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or friends or my wife. In the case of the real estate, they're just tagging along, and then it becomes, oh, I've got this problem. Oh, well, one of my sons became the lawnmower for all the properties. Instant business, built in, and she's paying less than she would at another agency. But he's like, man, I just hit the lottery here, 12 years old. And I'm like, I hit the bank. That was a cheat code or a process enabled. And then I'm helping show how to check the oil, change the oil, all the maintenance. And so a lot of guidance, a lot of hand-holding as they're getting up and running. It would just be really foolish, just like it would be foolish for Andrea to send her son the first time into a parking lot to do an exchange of shoes. That would be foolish. Setting up the structure and guarding it carefully until there's a pattern that's established. So yeah, we need to be involved in this. We can't just turn them loose and say, good luck with that. Show me your business plan. And I know that what you're saying, but I really appreciate the question and definitely a lot. And the great thing is it's what bonds us to the kids and makes incredible relationships. I mean, it's so fun. Days of old, I mean, I'm not sure I want to go back and live 200 years ago and use outhouses in the Sears and Roebuck catalog. But you know what? In a lot of ways, having your children with you and working and having that exchange and that close visceral reaction is what we're going for. We're actually restoring in some ways some of the models of old when families were stabilized and not having this terrible fragmentation that's occurring now.
Rich, Jenny has a great question too, which is the program applicable for families where several children are adults living outside the home and then some are still living at home?
Dead so. The concepts hold true, and actually, as you pointed out, Andrea, most of this content is actually being, because they may be at a point where they can actually do their own business, but it's the first time that I've actually modeled on video and walked through zigzag principle. So I actually think, I've got to tell you, because I've been doing these big family legato events with wealthy families. And my favorite event by far were non-traditional families. And then one grandfather brought all his children and older grandchildren in. That was by far the biggest impact, funnest event I think I've ever ran. So I think in some ways it can even be deployed more precisely and more interaction and more engagement with older children involved in also. And in all reality, we've done family stuff. We've shut that business down, but at one point we had a family entity that was owned 85% by the kids, and my wife and I owned 15%. And then we put some careful guardrails on it. But that was the entity that then paid for every family vacation we went on. That's right. My 12-year-old and 8-year-old were paying for the family vacations. And so stuff like that can be very easily transposed across multiple children.